Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff. This week on the show, we are going to be living up to this show's name by just talking about stuff. I'm not even sure what all stuff we're going to talk about. I have a couple of things to talk about. You've told me about a couple of things, but you've probably also not told me about a couple of things. We were off last week because of the Thanksgiving break. We were traveling, all that stuff. And we were maybe going to do the next Gundam today, and then I realized I did not have time to finish Iron Blood Orphans, and I didn't want to rush it because I want to do it justice. So this is just going to be a shooting the shit episode of the Weekly Stuff Podcast. Let me tell you about a couple of things I wanted to talk about, which included the Guardians of the Galaxy game. I played all of that. We've got a couple pieces of news, like the trailer for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. Sean, what do you have for us?
I've finished Persona 5 Royal, which is a thing I have to remember to talk about because I finished it almost exactly 2 weeks ago, because I finished it, I think, the day after we recorded the last podcast we did. So I've had it in the back of my head, don't forget, even though it's been like 2 full weeks that it seems like you would have talked about on the podcast. So I finished that. I've put probably like 10-something hours into Persona 5 Strikers also and have had a good time with that. But the main thing I've been doing for the past 2 weeks is I got an Xbox Series S around my birthday, and I have been on what I can only describe as a Halo bender, because I have replayed through every Halo campaign up to I am halfway through Halo 5's campaign. I have gone fucking crazy.
Nice.
And then I've messed around with some of the Halo Infinite stuff, and we can talk about that too. But it has mostly been like, it has been a long time because I haven't had an Xbox as a like main console hooked up to my main TV for a while. So it was real like I just gotta get the Halo out of my system, which is mainly why I bought the Series S in the first place.
It's a good little machine for that and for lots of other things. You liking it so far?
Yes, yeah. It's a cool little box.
Yep. All right, well, we will talk about all of that. And I guess the stuff will sort of be the main topic today. So I think we will go into the news in a second here. I did have one sort of little piece of personal stuff that I thought I'd share here, Sean. I am wrapping up the semester here at Iowa and wrapping up my classes that I'm teaching. And as you all know, because I've talked about it pretty incessantly on this podcast, one of my classes that I'm teaching is this film club that is it's like a 1 semester hour course that students come and take, and that you just like watch a movie every week. And the topic I did this semester was giant robots on film. And we only have one movie left, and the last movie is The Iron Giant, which most of them have seen because it's The Iron Giant. I thought we'd put the most well-known movie at the very end. I think that's the right way to do it. And so I sent out a survey to my students this weekend, asking them. I'm doing this with my other class too, because I like to gauge like how effective were the different screenings. Asking them basically what was their favorite film, what was their least favorite film, what were other movies they liked in the class, some open comment area if they want to do that, all anonymous. And I do not have full data from my film club course yet. I only have about half the responses back yet. But Sean, would you like to know the preliminary choice from the class for their favorite movie from Giant Robots on Film?
Yes, Jonathan. What are the teens into these days?
Believe it or not, you're going to think I'm making this up. This is such a dream ending to this whole story. The Gundam trilogy got the most votes.
I mean, of course, it's the best. It's the best.
It's the best thing I showed, definitely.
Yeah.
There was some stiff competition, though.
It's like, I think people get in their head that it's like, oh, it's like old 70s anime, people, it's too old or stuffy or whatever for people to get into. It's like, it turns out that good shit is good shit, and if you just sit down and watch it, it's really fucking good.
Yes. Now, I will say, it also had the second highest number of people who said it was their least favorite thing, which also does not surprise me for the reasons you just said of, like, some people are just going to reject older, anime stuff. But it was the highest on the most liked. But honestly, it had a pretty good spread. Like, so I also asked, I asked favorite, least favorite, and then I had an open field with all the movies and said, pick 3 others you really liked, so I could get a gauge of, like, what worked. And I was really happy everything got a vote on that. So that means that most of the screenings went over well. One of the ones the one that got the most votes in that open field was The Day the Earth Stood Still, which I didn't talk about yet, but I did show that a couple weeks ago, and that one went over really well. I mean, that's a great movie that I think a lot of people today haven't seen. I think it's another one of those that I think a lot of younger people would look at and go, oh, it's kind of 50s B-movie sci-fi. What's interesting about that? And then you watch it and you're like, this is just a fucking rock solid, great Cold War paranoid movie that has a killer dark ending. Great movie. People seem to really like that. Everyone loved Spider-Man 78, obviously. But I've had a lot of people come and talk to me and just tell me like different things that hit with them. A lot of people saying like, "Man, I loved Gunbuster," or some people who really responded to Pat Labor. But it was really cool. And I also had like a little open comments field. Some of the comments were very funny. I think one of them said something, and again, this is all anonymous. One of them said something to the effect of, "You called this class giant robots on screen. Mechs aren't technically robots. You lied."
It is true. It is like technically true.
It's technically true. I don't think it's really false advertising, but okay.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's, I think if you're being very, very exact with your definitions, mechs and robots are technically different things, because mechs are just basically big vehicles and robots have some sort of like independent operation capacity. But I think in a broad category, you can have, there's both robot, the specific word, and then there's robot generally, which is just like big metal things that look like people.
I mean, I didn't invent this. The fucking genres are called super robot and real robot. Yes. I didn't, come up with this. Come on. Anyway, but that was fun. I had, people talking about some of the different movies. Again, like some people who really liked various things that surprised me. Some people who didn't. Anyway, once I have the full survey results, I will share those next week. Just some of my, not all of the data, but some of what I think is funny. I also want to say in my film theory class, which is the more sort of rigorous academic class I've been teaching this semester, I had a pretty good, run on my screenings in there too. And I was also, but I also felt very vindicated because their favorite movie, overwhelmingly in that class where I do have the full data, was for our week on animation theory, which is kind of my area of expertise. Not kind of. I've done comprehensive exams on that. I'm technically a certified expert in this. I showed Laputa, Castle in the Sky, the Miyazaki movie. That overwhelmingly was their favorite movie in the data. So I just feel very vindicated on both ends because basically my favorite movie in both classes got their favorite choice, and that's rare and cool.
Yeah. I mean, particularly, it would be hard for a Studio Ghibli movie to not be, like, everyone's favorite. Like, there's such, like, good
perfect movies.
Yeah, they're, like, perfect, and they're, like, crowd-pleasing in that way of, like, it's hard to imagine a person that would not like it, right? Like, I've never run into a person in my life that's like, you're someone who would hate a Studio Ghibli movie. I don't know if that person exists.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But it was fun. I did also, though, this week, Sean, have my first experience with teaching a movie where I had assigned the film and the students fucking hated it and rejected it.
Great.
Now, I have done that before as a TA, as a teaching assistant, and that's a different kind of awkward where when they hate the movie, I get to, like, kind of come in on their side and be like, yeah, I don't know why the professor chose that. You guys can like me, and that's, like, a good... And it's not just me being, like, selfish, it's also a way to kind of, like, help reroute the conversation, But, like, this was the first, because these are my solo classes, I picked everything, and we were teaching digital cinema theory and digital cinema ideas, and I picked the movie, and I think if you've seen this movie, which not many people have because it was a giant bomb, but if you've seen it, you'll know why I did it. I picked Michael Mann's Black Hat from 2015, which I've been describing to people pithily as the movie where Chris Hemsworth is a sexy hacker who stabs people, because that is kind of what it is. He plays a sexy, ripped computer hacker genius who also stabs people with a fucking, like, screwdriver that he's whittled down to a knife point at the end of the movie. I think it's a great movie. It was a movie that was very, like, critically divisive on release. It bombed utterly in theaters. It was kind of buried by the studio to be fair. It was like a January release, like right after Christmas.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever even heard of this movie, and I really like Michael Mann's stuff. So
you should see it, Sean. It's Michael Mann's last movie for now. I think he's making something new, but this is the last movie he's made up to now, and it's extremely Michael Mann, especially from his, like, digital era where it's. And the reason I showed it is Michael Mann, I think, has made the most interesting use of digital cameras in his work in the 2000s. If you look at Collateral, Miami Vice, Public Enemies, he makes movies on digital that, like, lean into the digital side of the look and do a lot of stuff that is, like, more interesting on digital. He's not just trying to, like, make movies that you could also make on 35 millimeter, and I think that's an interesting choice. But Black Hat has this extra layer of being about hacking and cybersecurity, and it is by far the most realistic Hollywood movie about hacking and cybersecurity. Like, it's got silly stuff like Chris Hemsworth is, looks like Chris Hemsworth and can also like fight people, but he's also a computer genius. Like, that's a little silly. As I said to my students, looking like Chris Hemsworth is a full-time job, and being a genius computer hacker is a full-time job, and there's really not a whole lot of overlap in those two departments,
Yeah, they just should have like super ripped like muscles in his forearm, and that's it. Just from like all the furious fucking typing he's doing. But his biceps are just puny.
Yeah, that'd be fucking great. But anyway, other than that, though, it's like very into like the minutia of it. Like, the inciting incident in the movie is basically there's a run on soy futures in the stock market through hacking, and that kicks off this whole like intergovernment agency response with like the Chinese government and the U.S. government, and then they get this Chris Hemsworth character who's in federal prison for hacking out of prison because he invented this program that these people stole and used to hack the soy futures. I think it's a fascinating movie. I think it's very, like, if you like Michael Mann, I think it's super interesting on that level because it's a Michael Mann action movie for the digital age, and it even like, and very like self-consciously, like Chris Hemsworth quotes lines from past Michael Mann heroes like in Manhunter and Heat and stuff like that. I think it's a great movie. The students fucking hated it. And I mean, like, literally, I have them do a little questions thread every week where before discussion I have them submit like, hey, what are some like thoughtful, significant questions you would submit to discussion from the film and the reading this week? And it just gets them thinking, and it allows me to see what's on their mind so I can address it in discussion. It's been a very good tool, but I went to look that up like the night before our discussion, and my heart just sank into my fucking chest, and it was hard to sleep because they were all talking about how much they fucking... It wasn't like, this movie was okay. It was like they fucking hated it to a person, and it was like so brutal. And I knew the movie was kind of a coin toss because it is a weird, kind of cheesy movie, and if you have never seen Michael Mann, I realized this watching, I'm like, oh right, women aren't characters in Michael Mann. Like, I don't know if I would go as far as say it's like his movies are sexist. It's just that like he is so engaged on like issues of masculinity and male identity that's like where his full focus is, and I don't think that's a bad thing in and of itself. But like, it's particularly stark in Black Hat, and there's just a lot of stuff like that. There's like some of the cheesiness of it. There was also like, they were not all that excited about the soy futures.
When you were describing some of the plot, I'm like, I think I could identify why, because these would be like 18, 19-year-olds, right? You're teaching?
Yeah, 18, 19, 20, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, I can see why maybe some of like that is not going to be the most interesting thing in the world to them.
Michael Mann also has like weird and sometimes kind of bad sound design these days because the industry chatter is that he's sort of going deaf, and he still wants to like do all the sound mixing on his films and not let anyone like fix it for him. So some of this dialogue is just unintelligible, kind of in a Chris Nolan way. But anyway, I had fun watching it. I felt in the room and the energy like, I don't think they're that into it, but I didn't know they were going to hate it. Anyway, it's an awkward position to be in. I think I did pretty well. 14 screenings so far this semester and only one that they didn't like. That's a very good batting average. But it is, I texted a teacher who I'm still friends with from CU Boulder and said, I am so sorry for every time I was a jerk about movies in your class because it's such a terrible position to be in. I feel like because I was way more of an asshole when I was an undergrad than any of my students were to me about movies I didn't like. So I wasn't even, like, one of my students emailed me after the screening and was like, or after the discussion was like, hey, I'm sorry if I was a little too harsh on all that. And I'm like, I didn't even notice. Again, like, I was way more of a jerk to my teachers about this kind of stuff. You guys were great. So
yeah, I remember you in high school, so I could only imagine. Because I'll say, like, the experience of teaching something to a group of people that, like, they just fucking despise you for is the ninth grade English teacher experience of, like, sorry guys, but there's a fucking blood oath was taken at some point that all ninth graders must be taught Romeo and Juliet. There's no alternative. There's no, like, I have no power in this. The school has no power in this. Like, humanity has no power in this. God has decided you must learn Romeo and Juliet. So be fucking grateful I got the goddamn comic book for you fuckers. That was my attitude. Because it's like,
right.
Yeah. You teaching high school English, particularly to ninth graders, you get a lot of, like, people who really just, like, make it their life's mission to tell you, I hate this fucking book.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's hard. And obviously I have it much better than like you do because I have more leeway. There's the only movie equivalent of that I think is like Citizen Kane, maybe? But I don't know. Yeah, but Citizen Kane I also think is easier to get people interested in probably than Romeo and Juliet.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, Sean, do you want to hit some news?
What's going on in the news, Jonathan?
Well, first off, yesterday we got our first look at the new Spider-Man
Yes.
Spider-Verse movie. We got the trailer, or like really a teaser, for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Part 1, which is so funny because when I saw the Part 1 thing, I thought it meant this was like Part 1 of a teaser.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went offline and I was like, okay. And then I looked it up later and I saw an interview with Chris Lord and Phil Miller, who were the co-writers and producers on the first movie, and they're writing and producing this one as well. And they said, yes, it is a two-part movie. When we wrote the film, it just got big, and so they are animating at the same time two movies. Part 1 is 2022. It's coming out October 7th, 2022, one day before my 30th birthday. And then the next one is coming 2023. So fucking great news.
Yep.
Like, we are getting two Spider-Verse movies in 2 years, and the trailer was fucking phenomenal. So,
Yes.
like, my only worry at all with the Spider-Verse sequel is it's a different set of directors this time, which is not that surprising. Animation takes a long time and is taxing, and I'm not surprised the people who did the first movie did not roll right off onto the next two. But I'm like, you kind of wonder, and then you see it, and you're like, oh, nope, they know what they're doing. I'm totally at peace. This looks fucking great.
Yeah, because it's clear that like the animation team is clearly the same. Like it's got the same style and aesthetic that is like the best in the business in terms of 3D digital animation. And yeah, it is a sick trailer. Again, like you said, it's more of a teaser. But the general sort of setup or like premise it feels like it's giving you is it's flipping Into the Spider-Verse on its head, where Into the Spider-Verse was you're with Miles and all these other Spider-Mans from alternate universes come into his world. And then clearly this movie or these two movies are going to be about Miles going through to other Spider-Man universes and him ending up in other verses where they have like their own animation style and stuff like that. So there's that one really sick scene where Spider-Man, was it 2099, pops in and he's fighting him in like future world universe. And it's like, fucking hell yes. Please give me more weird, strange other universes through this really unique, interesting aesthetic lens that Spider-Verse has. That is hugely exciting.
Hugely exciting, and like every time I've watched that first movie, Sean, I am more, not less, amazed that it got made. Like, I am amazed that Hollywood made that movie, because it is like borderline avant-garde at times what it is doing with its art style. It is the most stylistically adventurous Hollywood movie in years. Like, the only thing I could point to that's like on that level is like a Mad Max Fury Road, but I don't know if I would even go with stylistically adventurous. It's just, it's so fucking good, It does have some very adventurous stuff, like, electric guitar fire guy, but like Spider-Verse just off the charts. And it looks like they're not, like, my only worry was like, Spider-Verse 1 made good money, but it didn't make like $1 billion movie money. It made like 400 million. Would Sony be like, you need to make it a little more palatable? Nope. You see that sequence with Spider-Man 2099 and it's weirder than anything in the original movie. And that just makes me so excited. I love, like, because you can do this in animation, they've, like, slightly aged up Miles. You can tell he's, like, just a little taller. Maybe he's had a little bit of a growth spurt. There's stuff like that they're able to do that's really cool. I like that they're, bringing back some of the characters from the first one, like Gwen. It just, fucking, I can't. Someone tweeted this yesterday, and I think it's very true, which is that they're like, man, it's very rude of Spider-Verse to completely steal No Way Home's thunder before it even comes out. And it's true. Because, like, I'm sure Spider-Man No Way Home will be fun, but I do still kind of question the logic of trying to do the multiverse thing when Spider-Verse is over here blowing the fucking doors off.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, nothing can be anywhere near as good as Spider-Verse in, like, 900 different ways, right? It's this, like, because it is this thing of where, like, animation is just, like, I think kind of an inherently more interesting medium than live action. And, like,
especially for these kind of stories.
Yes. And like, the Western audience in general is so starved of interesting animation because, like, the animation styles that are acceptable over here is, like, so limited. And it's really, that's, like, the thing about Spider-Verse that is, like, amazing to me is it's just the kind of movie that you can't imagine being made over here because it's not a Pixar movie, it's not DreamWorks, right? It's not Disney. It's not in the like acceptable like range of narrative and aesthetic styles that we've sort of like accepted for 20 to 30 years in particular. I mean, forever really in Western animation, but like in particular, since like the 90s, we have been very stuck in this like Disney Renaissance inspired mode. And just saying, fuck it, like animation can be whatever. That's really heartening, and it's cool that Sony is letting this team make not just one more movie, but two more movies, and getting it like back to back like that. It's sick.
Yeah. And I don't know if there's any other movie where they could announce a 2-part sequel and I wouldn't roll my fucking eyes, because a lot of the time that spells doom. This is like, yes, please, just, yeah, that's awesome. Especially because animation takes so long to complete. Mm-hmm. If they don't, it's kind of like a live action production. If you're doing it all at once, you can like streamline the pipeline and do a lot of stuff. So that means we're getting more of this faster, and I think that's cool too.
Yeah, and it definitely, I think you see that trailer and knowing that that's what like sort of their premise is. Like, it makes sense that they would have quickly found it unwieldy to put a story like that into only one movie. Like, if they're going to be moving across a bunch of different universes and having what I'm going to guess is a significantly larger number of Spider-Mens or Spider-People and stuff like that, you're going to want to give that kind of like breadth of the world building more time to breathe than what you would have needed for the first movie that was crazy but relatively pared back compared to having your protagonist go somewhere else. Having things come to your protagonist is a lot easier story to write.
Exactly. Oh man, Sean, another story from my film club. So, I showed the Spider-Man 78 Toei movie.
Yes.
And they've already said, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, that they want it. I don't know if it will be, but they've said they want to use the Takia, whatever his name is, version of Spider-Man in this with Leopardon and everything. Mm-hmm. And I told that to my students after we saw the Spider-Man 78. It sounded like the fucking, like, their favorite football team had just won the Super Bowl. It was like they were so excited, like, oh my god, they're gonna be in Spider-Verse? And I'm like, yeah, I cannot wait for Miles to meet crazy fucking Japanese Spider-Man in his ill-fitting Halloween costume, climbing around on the walls, and then getting in Leopardon. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, because they in the comic books, they did that not that long ago, where there was a huge, I forget what the event was called, but there was a huge Spider-Man like multiverse event, and they had him come back with Leopardon and with his fucking catchphrases, and everything the character said was contextually in Japanese, and it was like in brackets, like translated into English for the sake of the readers. That also had, I would love if they brought this back, because that just reminded me, there was a character in that crossover. Crossover is kind of a weird way to phrase it, because it's just like random weird Spider-Man characters. But there was a character called Spiders Man, which is Spider-Man, but it's like, I think the backstory was like that his universe, Peter Parker's like consciousness got transferred into an actual spider, and it's like it is the most horrifying idea, because it's a colony of spiders inside a Spider-Man suit, and it is Spiders Man. It is a man made of multiple spiders in a Spider-Man suit. They absolutely fucking need to put Spiders Man in these new Spider-Verse movies.
Well, luckily they got 2 movies to do it all. I just want to know, what, like, A-list Japanese voice actor do they get for Japanese Spider-Man? Because there's a lot of good choices there.
Well, in the Japanese dub of Into the Spider-Verse, they had Mia Mamoru play the older Peter B. Parker. They should just bring him back.
That's pretty good. Yeah. That's pretty good. All right. I was also thinking, just because Demon Slayer is on the mind for a number of reasons, Hanai Natsuki would be a fucking great Peter Parker.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. I could see him doing like that version of Spider-Man from the show, the 78 show, who's kind of like a buttoned up, like, kind of version of Peter. Mm-hmm. Anyway, all right. Next piece of news, Sean, also on the Sony front, because Spider-Man is in the movieverse, a Sony thing. There was a Bloomberg report yesterday from Jason Schreier, who was reporting that Sony is planning in the next year to launch a new service that will be roughly a competitor to Xbox Game Pass. It would combine basically PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now, 2 existing services. PlayStation Now is sort of this weird appendage Sony has had for a long time. It started out as basically a streaming-only thing where you could play like PS3 games on your PS4 over streaming. They were even doing it on TVs and stuff back in the day, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could, like, in like the PS Vita TV and stuff like that,
yep.
PS Now apps, you can do it on your PC and that's been around forever. Yeah.
That never really took off. It's become more of a Game Pass-esque kind of thing, but never with like the sheer heft of a Game Pass, and like not just in terms of what's in it, but like the marketing behind it. It's never been super central to what Sony's been putting out there. But it sounds like they're finally going to start to take this seriously, build a bigger subscription service. Jason Schreier said they're not planning on putting first-party Sony games in there the way Microsoft has with first-party Xbox games. But other than that, it would try to emulate a lot of the things Game Pass has done. Probably have a lot of indies, lots of different games in there. Make it like combined with PS Plus, a la Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and sort of be a competitor to the back compat element of Game Pass and Nintendo Switch Online by probably making this the vector by which they put out PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 games on the service. And so that seems like something they're in the works on. Not super surprising. Honestly, I think it's weird it's taken them this long to take Game Pass seriously as a competitor. And they certainly have a lot of ground to catch up on because Game Pass is a really mature platform at this point and has a lot of tendrils out there. But I think this is interesting. I think if they do a decent job on this, it could be interesting. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I think it's hard to know because there's not like any obviously like confirmed details because this is a sort of like insider leak more or less of like plans for something that would be announced like in spring next year. So it's like hard to know like what would the pricing be like what if it's not day one big Sony first party exclusives, which I would never really expect. I think the Game Pass strategy I don't think makes sense for the kinds of games that Sony puts out and like the kind of like premium thing that they've sort of moved for the first party studios. So it makes sense to me that they wouldn't just like put all their day one games on there, but then like that then raises the question of what are the things that they're then like pushing as the like what are like the third party partnerships and things like that they have in place. Like I'm very curious to see what this looks like ultimately, but it's hard to know when we're so far away from like Sony actually like officially positioning this in the market.
Yeah, and I'm a little. I don't know if I 100% agree on the new games thing. I understand what you're saying, and I think that the main reason is because they sell incredibly well already, and you don't need to do that. But at the same time, like, you know, Xbox's whole thing with Game Pass is that you need an Xbox and Game Pass, and that's it. That's like their whole pitch, right? Yeah. And it's very true. When I am using my Xbox actively, I have Game Pass, and that's pretty much all I'm using on it. And it's all encompassing for the Xbox and then your PC and streaming and all of that. They've got all of that together. With Sony, if you're not putting the first party things in there, which are like the main focus of the PlayStation lineup every year, then it automatically like can't be that thing. It can't be the like you need a PlayStation and PlayStation Game Pass or whatever it is, and it's our all-encompassing subscription service. And I'm not saying you need to do that, but I do kind of wonder what its purpose is, because then, right, you need to figure out, because like with Xbox, I think a lot of people's favorite games on Game Pass aren't necessarily the big first-party titles, but those big first-party titles are what get you into Game Pass, and then you discover everything else, right? And so what is the thing that will draw you into it? My guess is honestly that one of those things will be any back compat stuff they can add, a la what Nintendo Switch has done, where their online service is fully on the backs of like Nintendo nostalgia, and it works. They've done a pretty shitty job with it overall because they have two platforms and then N64 just limping along. Mm-hmm. But like, you know, if Sony does that well, that could be a big draw. But it will be, again, it'll be a bigger draw in like the Nintendo sense of it, not... I kind of wonder if you can be a Game Pass competitor if you're not doing all those other things, like, because Game Pass has become like this all-encompassing corporate strategy that is like number one. It doesn't sound like this will be number one on like the call sheet for them in terms of their strategy. And I can't imagine a world where they charge a fairly high subscription fee for like getting every Sony first-party game in a year, because there are a lot of PlayStation gamers like you and me who pretty much play all of them, you know, when they come out. And I could imagine that as a thing, but then they don't really need to do that because they
Yeah.
get you to pay $70 for them every time. So
and it's just like, I'm curious because I also don't know then what does that do. This is something that we still haven't seen all the way with Game Pass on Xbox, but then what does that do to like how does that change the kinds of games you're making?
Right.
If you're not making, because right, like the Sony games, I feel like part of like the thing about them is that they're games that feel like they exist to, like, they're designed to justify their premium costs, especially now that it is a premium cost, right? It's $70 for like your next gen titles, and it's like they make these like industry leading, like best in class, big story focused, single player focused games that like nobody else makes. And it's like I wonder if that starts becoming less appealing if everything is based on a subscription service, and instead you want to move to more service based titles, like what I feel like it feels like it's more like kind of the Xbox thing with like Gears of War and Halo and stuff like that, where they're more like longer, more multiplayer focused, like kind of games that you replay a lot. Like that's kind of more at least what Microsoft's first party stuff so far, and obviously they've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline with all the studios they've purchased. But I like that part of it just kind of makes the Sony thing make less sense. Like if I were to do metaphor, it feels like Sony is making, you know, your blockbuster movies where you kind of want to have that like theater like experience and the theater based revenue. And it feels like Xbox is making like Netflix shows kind of thing. Like neither one is necessarily better than the other, but they feel like they're different kinds of strategies to attack different kinds of markets.
Well, that's a really good way of putting it, and I guess that's where I think the framing, and who knows if this is how Sony is actually going to, you know, think about it or frame it, is the framing as a Game Pass competitor. If you're not doing the first party stuff in there, it's not really a Game Pass competitor. It's a different thing, right? And I guess like, that's what I'm saying.
And it feels like I feel like based on reading the Jason Schreier report, like this feels more like they are finding a way to make PS Now something that is more like broadly palatable and something they're putting more weight behind. And because PS Now has always been historically a backwards compatible focused thing, because it started as you stream your PS3 games. And so if they do, because they've already got a PS2 emulator that they've had on the PS4 forever with like, you know, a handful of games, like it's just never been broadly supported, but they put out PS2 games on PS4. If you do that and you have a bunch of PS1 games on there, and then I'm going to guess that PS3 is probably still going to be streaming, because I can't imagine they'd want to put the like internal resources in making a like robust PS3 backwards compat thing that deals with your cell processor bullshit and all that. But if you do that, then you have a big selection of PS4 games, and then you have some like big third party PS5 games and like indie deals, and you're like, you know, wheeling and dealing in that market. I think you can position PS Now as something that's more robust, that like sits more naturally in the current like subscription framework that Sony has. I think like the thing that made sense to me was like Schreier described it as thinking like it was like a 3-tiered or multi-tiered subscription. So wrapping all that in, kind of like what Xbox has. And I almost feel like Xbox needs to do this, because I kind of feel like here's Xbox Live Gold, here's Game Pass PC, here's Game Pass Ultimate. Like when I was trying to deal with that with Series S, I was a little bit confused about like, what is Game Pass Ultimate? Is that gold, or is that just console and PC? Like that feels a little bit fractured, because Game Pass has been thrown into the sort of same bucket that gold existed in forever. And just restructuring that and building PS Now as like, it's Super PS Plus, and you get, here's your like PS1, PS2, and PS3 and PS4 subscription games, and we'll get some extra goodies, and you get more free games every month, rather than just like the 2 or 3 you normally get on your basic PS Plus. That makes a lot more sense to me, as a thing that I think Sony would do, rather than like going full hog, like everything is on our subscription, like we are, you know, like Xbox goes so far to feel like sometimes they almost like actively disincentivize you, like with Halo. Charging $60 for that campaign feels like it is them saying, you don't want to pay $60 for only a Halo campaign, why not just have a Game Pass subscription? You can just play it, and then you're doing your multiplayer shit. Like, that's the Xbox strategy, and I just don't see Sony going in that direction.
Yeah, I think seeing this as like beefing up PS Plus makes the most sense, because right now PlayStation Plus is sort of an odd man out service in a way, because Nintendo Switch Online is cheaper and does get you a lot more. I know you get those PS Plus free games every month, but that's a very much a crapshoot of like, are you going to get like a real game or something from the bargain bin that you will never play?
Yeah. Or even if it's like a good game, is it a game that you've already bought? Or
Right.
is it a game that you're interested in? You know, so it's like a lot of times I run into a situation where like they put Hitman 2 on the service. It's like, that's awesome. If you haven't played Hitman 2, unfortunately, unfortunately or fortunately, I've played like 200 hours of Hitman 2. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fortunately, that's a good way to spend 200
Yes.
hours. But like with Nintendo Switch Online, you get like about 100 games from NES and SNES, and they are, a lot of them, certified masterpieces. So you've got that. Over on Xbox, you can technically buy gold if you want. I don't know why anyone gets gold and doesn't just get like Game Pass Ultimate, which is all of it in a bundle. And so PlayStation Plus is sort of weird in that now it feels like remember back in the day PlayStation Plus was the value add because of those free games. Now it feels like the least value add of the services. So I think adding a version that sort of beefs it up does make more sense.
Yeah. I'm very excited and curious to see what this does. And then I'm also just curious, because we've got a couple of these subscription things out there now. Like EA has their own thing. I know EA currently has like a whole Microsoft deal. I know that because I haven't played it, but I do have the original Xbox game Black on my console because I have Game Pass. And I was like, I haven't played. I don't know if I will play Black, but I've always been curious about Black because it was a first-person shooter developed by Criterion Games, like right at the end of the original Xbox. And I was like, I'll download that. I don't know if I'll find time to play it. But right, so you've got a couple of these things, these subscription services out there, and like there's only so many, as we now very well know in like the TV movie space, there's only so many subscription services that can exist before it starts getting fucking ridiculous. And like it becomes like, well, now every TV show has its own subscription service is kind of like what it feels like at a certain point, because there's only so much content that can be made, and there's only so much legacy content to be divvied about amongst the different studios in the TV space. And it is like, I was just having this conversation with my brother and sister-in-law when they were over for Thanksgiving stuff about how like crazy it is and like hard it is to keep track of like what are you subscribed to, what do you need to be subscribed to, like have you seen this TV show? No. How do you see it? Oh, you have to get Peacock. It's like, what the fuck is that? Oh, it's the NBC one. It's like, oh, okay, I probably will never watch that show. Then it's like, oh, this is on Hulu, which is owned by Disney, but it's not Disney Plus, it's Hulu. And it's like, it's just such a fucking nightmare compared to back in the day. It was just like, here's Netflix streaming. It's got a bunch of shit on it because it's the only streaming service that existed. Like, back in the day, like, when I was in high school, Netflix had, like, every TV show I watched was just, like, on either Netflix or Hulu because those are the two things that did it.
And everyone had deals. That's actually part of how I listened to a podcast about this recently. Part of how Netflix got big is because the other studios didn't understand it, and they just sold all their content to them at, like, really cheap cut rate prices. So back in the day, Netflix had all of Disney's stuff. People forget that.
Yeah, it was like such a huge, robust service, and then now Netflix is like the only reason you have Netflix is just to watch the original content, because the legacy stuff is all crap, because it's either like, here's a bunch of shit tier fucking horror B movies, and everything else has moved off to, CBS is owned, CBS All Access or whatever the fuck, Peacock.
Yeah, it's all originals and acquisitions. So it's stuff they've made or stuff like they have a lot of foreign films and they're just the, Western distributor of it or something.
Yeah, and movies and TV shows are a lot cheaper and faster and easier to make than video games. And so I'm like curious to see how sustainable is the broader marketplace going to be if Sony like is very serious and actually puts their like a lot of weight behind them making a competing streaming service or like a subscription service thing. I'm curious to see what is the knock-on effect. Like, what does that do to Game Pass? Does Game Pass start having a harder time getting like third-party and indie games on there? Does like Ubisoft? Because I think Ubisoft does have its own thing. So does Ubisoft start then trying to beef up its shit? Does EA? Does Nintendo eventually like go outside of the Nintendo bubble for their stuff and do a bigger subscription service? Like, if this is the direction everything's moving in, I'm just curious what does this market look like in 5 years or in 10 years? And will we be looking back on Game Pass now like we look back on Netflix? Of like, man, that used to be so good, and now it's like I pay $1,000 a month because the only way I can play video games is by subscribing to 8 different subscription services that are like $120 a pop.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of Xbox, let's transition to stuff. And Sean, I just want to hear, people know I've talked about the Series S and I like it a lot. That quick resume feature is coolest fucking thing. I fucking love it. But what do you think about the Series S so far in your first couple weeks with it?
It's cool. It's a cool little box. Yeah, like it's like I'll say, the quick resume thing is cool in concept. The only problem I have with it is the only games I've really played. I've messed around a little bit with like Forza. I've messed around with like a couple of things, but I've mostly only put time into the Master Chief Collection and Halo Infinite. And with online in both of those games, the online gets broken if it loads up from quick resume. So it's like I have to quit out. Like, I wish there was a way to just tell a game never be in quick resume. Like, you can quit out of it, but you can't tell it never put this game into quick resume, because like I'm sure when you're using it for like single player games and stuff like that, it's a very cool feature. But so far it has been a thing of like, I just wish it didn't do this, please, because now every time I load it Master Chief Collection, it like pauses at the beginning of every mission, and I can't load it to multiplayer anymore.
So I understand. I just wanted to say, for me, it totally depends on what you play, but I've spent a couple weeks with it where I've been playing Forza Horizon 5, and it's and like jumping around into other games too. Like, there was a time where I was playing Forza Horizon 5, I was playing Cyber Shadow, and then jumping into some other games, and it's such a cool idea to have a game as big as Forza Horizon 5 and be like, I want to try another little game here, but I don't want to have to like quit out of this and lose where I'm in, and just jump into that and then jump back in, and a game as fucking huge, massive, big as Forza Horizon 5 just loads in an instant back in. That is the craziest fucking thing. I agree with you. I think they should have some of those features you mentioned, because there's some games it just makes no sense for and is never going to work with, but when it works, it's very cool, and I like that.
Yeah. But yeah, other than that, like it's a thing of where like I can definitely tell, if I'm playing a game like Forza or Halo Infinite, of like games definitely look blurrier, obviously, than like the PS5. But it is generally like it is an impressive little box, like, and particularly for like the purposes that I want it for, which is like 90%. I bought this thing just to play the Halo Master Chief Collection and to replay those games and have that be an easy thing to me to be able to access. And particularly for that, it's like absolutely perfect, because it's this little tiny box. I have it right next to my PS5, and it's hilarious because the PS5 is massive, and they're both like white with like black, and so it like the Xbox Series S looks like it's the like little brother of my PS5 or something. They're very cute together. I like them.
Yes.
And so it's this little thing. It's got a sort of next gen feel to. The UI is very snappy. It turns on quick. It loads into games very quickly. It doesn't have any of that sort of like cruft of an Xbox One or a PS4 of like menus just being less responsive and games taking long to load or anything. So it's got that. And then it's cheap, relatively speaking. It's $300. Like, one of the reasons why I bought it was because I had managed to get my way out of having to spend what would have been probably about $350 taking tests to get my like educator's license fully transferred over to Texas, because I've had like a 1-year permit since I moved, but there's this whole long convoluted process in getting your like one state's license changed to another. And it was a long battle for me to be like, hey, I took these tests, I got a near perfect test score on the like content exam you had to take to get an educator's license in Colorado, and they're like, no, you need to do, it doesn't count for XX and X. And I'm like, no, it should definitely count. You just want me to do this because you want the $350 I have to pay to take all these dumb tests. I finally got that sorted, so I had like $300 kind of sitting around in a way of like I had set it aside planning to take these tests that it ultimately didn't need to, and that happened to be right around my birthday is when I found that out. So I was like, I'm gonna
treat yourself. That's perfect. Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
I was like, I just looked up like Xbox Series S. Can I get one? It's like, yep, they're in like any Best Buy around me. They all have Xbox Series S's, and I ordered one and drove the next day to go pick it up. And I loaded up Halo Master Chief Collection. I downloaded Halo Master Chief Collection, Forza, and Halo 5. And then it filled up the hard drive, and so then I put on I had a spare extra little 2 terabyte hard drive sitting around. And I plugged that in and downloaded some of my like legacy Xbox stuff on there. So you definitely need to be mindful of it is particularly Master Chief Collection is like all things told. I think it's about 150 gigabytes if you have the whole game and ODST and Reach add-ons installed. So that is like a ridiculously large game for good reason. But you do need to know if you are buying this for some games like maybe keep in mind what the data sizes of some of those games are, because
If-
it is a thing you need to take into account, because it is very small storage space.
Yes. Yeah, I've found like it's, I think you're going to be able to fit one or two big games and then a good assortment of little games.
Yes.
And, luckily Game Pass has a lot of smaller games, and I have seen like Xbox is also having the thing PlayStation is having where some next gen games are smaller than they would otherwise be because of the solid state drive. Although it's not as drastic as on PS5, because PS5 usually they're not also trying to do it for the PS4 the same way. But like I would definitely say if you are like an active Call of Duty player, do not get the Series S, and that is Call of Duty's fault. That's not the Series S's fault. Call of Duty is just fucking terrible at data compression. But yeah, Vanguard I think is like over 200 gigabytes.
Yeah, so yeah, if the only games you want to play are Call of Duty and Halo, well then good, because those are the only games you'd be able to fit on that hard drive.
Yes. But yeah, I do have to say though, you said you were able to just go get it. Series S we learned was the highest selling console on Black Friday. And like you just got to give it to Microsoft. This was resolutely a genius fucking decision, because making a console a true next gen machine, like it doesn't have every bell and whistle, but it has it where it counts. And it's only $300, which means it's cheaper than everything else, including the Switch OLED, which is now $350. And because it's cheaper, they can make it easier during a supply chain crunch, and so it's the only next-gen machine that's easy-ish to find. Fucking genius move, very, very smart on Microsoft's behalf. I'm sure there's a lot of people there who are, like, very happy, because I bet they couldn't even predict all of the issues that would go into making it as popular as it's become,
Yeah, because it is like overall in far less demand than the Series X and the PS5, which is one of the reasons why, right? Like I think what happened on Black Friday was like the Xbox Series S, like the supply had outstripped the demand, and then demand for everything spikes on Black Friday. Demand for Xbox Series S now meets the supply that they had, whereas for Series X and Switch and PS5, because also, like, I don't think I would, if I had decided, you know what, I want with my $300-ish, I want to buy a Switch, I don't think I could have, because they didn't have any, at least at the Best Buy that I was looking at. Because it was a thing I considered about, like, oh, maybe I should pick up a Switch. It's like, well, maybe I could, but not today. So I'll just go ahead and get my Halo box. But yes, like the Series S is definitely positioned in this place where they can supply more of them. And it's like, it is a less desirable item for hardcore consumers because you have the more premium version that is out there. It's just not readily available. And I think like a year on from the release of the PS5 and the Series X, like, is the point at which people like me who maybe would have considered, if it was readily available, just getting a Series X because, I could afford it. Like, I'm not rolling in cash, but I could spare the extra $200 to upgrade for a Series X, and there would be a certain appeal to that. Like, that's not even a thing I would even consider because it's too hard to even get. So I think there's like a lot of people like me that is like, you know what? Yeah, might as well pick it up. And because it's easier to manufacture and the demand is not as overwhelming as the PS5 and Xbox Series X demand, like it is this smart, like it's that smart thing that businesses should do that the video game industry is very bad at doing, which is like having a broad portfolio and having like multiple options available at different like levels of like risk and levels of like cost to manufacture and things like that. And that's where like the AAA video game development space is awful at that, and everyone bets everything on one horse. And the hardware space has been a similar kind of position for, I think, more like necessary reasons, but it is smart for Xbox to sort of broaden their offerings that are available, and it definitely has worked out in a world where, like cars can't be made because you can't get the fucking semiconductors you need for your weird car computer shit.
I am 100% certain that Sony wishes they could go back in time and make the PS5 digital more like this, and because they cannot be happy with having a situation where a year on you can't go buy a PS5. I mean, that's just.
The thing is, like, you can in the sense of like they're still selling more PS5s than they sold PS4s, but you can't in the sense that you can't meet the like they would be selling way more PS5s than PS4s rather than like a little bit more.
It delays everything. It means it's harder to like make that move to next gen that they want to move to. And like I think that PS5 digital version just is this weird vestigial alternate thing that just kind of muddies the waters. And if it were the same thing as the Series S, I think they would be happier with that and consumers would be too. But who knows? Either way, Series S, cool little thing. Did you have any thoughts on the controller? I guess it's mostly the same as last gen.
Yeah,
but
it's basically the same. It's definitely better than the Xbox One controller in the sense of they had already fixed the bumper thing in a revision of the Xbox One controller. But to remind people, the original Xbox One controller bumpers were a piece of garbage. And they only depressed on the very edge of the button, and it was like you held it. And you're like, who was the maniac who decided to not make this like a full button and instead just make the button only at the very end of the bumper? It was crazy. Now they're just proper buttons, but again, they had already fixed that a while ago. The D-pad is very nice. I do like the D-pad.
I think I've called that out. That is like my favorite D-pad on any controller. I played all of Cyber Shadow with that instead of my Elite controller because I like that D-pad so fucking much. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's very nice and clicky. I do like I've been on the PlayStation train for so long now that I do really wish that it was in a more accessible spot, because that is the one thing I don't like about it is like, particularly in Halo Infinite, where it's like switch grenades is on the D-pad. I find that very awkward to try to hit because it's in a weird to reach spot. But like, especially when you're just like playing something or doing something that just requires using the D-pad, and you don't have to worry about moving between the analog stick and the D-pad, it's really, really nice feeling. The only problem I have with the Xbox controller, and it's the same one I had with the Xbox One, and I think it's very particular to me, is that the way I hold controllers is I hold it such that I have my middle fingers are on the triggers, my index fingers are on the bumpers. I've held controllers that way ever since like probably playing PS1 games, because it's just always made sense to me. And it's because I think I have very big hands with long fingers that are also like strong and flexible because I play guitar. So it's like it's very comfortable for me to hold the controller that way and just have access to all the bumpers on the back. And the Xbox One controller is not designed to make that a comfortable way to hold the controller, because the slope or like the angle on the edge of the controller is such that it's designed for your index finger to ride up along the edge of it. But since that's not how I hold it, it's like kind of like the ends of the controller sort of poke into my palms, and then my fingers end up kind of extending off and are not really touching the side of the controller until it gets up to the bumpers and the triggers. And like, I've just been playing games holding controllers like that for so long that I cannot possibly develop the muscle memory to use my index finger to pull the trigger button, because I have not done that for like 20 years or some shit.
I actually thought of you when I was using this, because you probably wouldn't notice this revision if you haven't used an Xbox One controller in a while, Sean, but one of the revisions is they also made that slope even finer. So like it slopes in a little even more, which makes it fits even better to your hand if you hold it the way I think most people do. But if you hold it your way, which makes total sense for what you just explained, I was like, I held it the first time, like, oh, this will be even worse for Sean now.
Yeah, it's like, it's not a big deal, but it definitely makes like after longer play sessions, like after a normal size play session, it's not a big deal. But I've been like binging Halo so hard that it definitely like I walk away and there's like my hands feel like physically tired in a weird, like it almost feels like if people have ever used like a like grip weight thing where like, you know, I forget what they're called, but like, you know, a weight that has like springs on it that you depress to sort of strengthen your grip. If people have ever used those, it almost kind of feels like having used that if I've played the game for like a 3 to 5 hour long like kind of marathon session. And I do have to say that overall, like I do vastly prefer the DualSense for like one reason, just like it is just better fitted to the way I hold the controller. And when I played some Forza Horizon 5, I definitely, that is where I missed having the rumble and the adaptive triggers, because it like that, like in Halo, it didn't even occur to me that it didn't have it, because I wouldn't even expect it because it's Halo. I'm used to how it plays. But playing a driving game, I'm like, God, I miss fucking the adaptive triggers on braking and accelerating in cars feels so good. I really, really wish that the Xbox controller had those features, particularly for that game.
I wanted to mention something. The Xbox One controller had this thing called
rumble triggers?
I don't even... Yeah, they had... I don't remember what they called it, but they had rumble in the triggers. And that's not in the Series S controller. I don't know if that's just for the Series S or if the Series X version is the same way, but it's not in there. But I also have the Elite controller, which does still have the rumble triggers, and it's even better than in the standard one. And it's phenomenal on Forza. It feels kind of like adaptive triggers. It's amazing, but it's not in the standard controller. And that's actually something they took out from Xbox One, which is weird, I think.
Yeah, when I played Xbox One stuff, the rumble triggers never really...
Forza's the only game that ever used it well, but Forza
even
used
like,
it
because I
phenomenally.
played Forza Horizon 4 that like summer, I used Game Pass and played like Outer Wilds and stuff, and it never, it's just like not quite the same thing. I think there's something about the particularly for breaking, and there aren't like a lot of great car games, or at least ones that like appeal to me on PlayStation. But every time, like the handful of times I've played a game with cars, like it's that sense of like the brake having like physical resistance, the way that brake has physical resistance in an actual car. Like that's the thing I like want. It makes drifting really fucking satisfying on a dual sense. And like that is the thing I really missed using the Xbox One controller. But like I feel like I'm saying a lot of like negative things about it, but overall my impressions of the console is like it's really cool. But like it's hard to have like it does the thing it does really really well. Is kind of like my overall take on the console. It's a cool thing.
Sean, I have a thought for you, though. I think I know exactly what you need to do to make your Xbox experience perfect. It'll be better for your hands specifically. Is I think you've got to buy, I put in the chat, you got to get one of these Duke controllers they've put out that are official for Xbox, right?
Yes.
That's what you need. $70, just get
what
one of those.
I need is the black and white buttons back in my life, baby. Like, that's what I want. Because I think the original Xbox controller is the only controller that I use my index fingers for to pull the triggers, because it is physically impossible to hold the controller any other way, and there are no bumper buttons in the first place. So yes, like that would be, I could do that. I'm not going to do that, but it's a nice recommendation. Thank you, Jonathan. I do like that you linked me the green limited edition, officially licensed by Xbox. Oh, that does remind me.
They're all limited editions. There's no not limited. That's actually one of the cheaper ones. Now they've got a like anniversary one that's $100.
Great.
It's
but that reminds me of like maybe my favorite thing is that like the UI is nice. It's very robust. Like I don't aesthetically, I'm not as into it as the PS5's like very minimalist thing. I like a lot, but it has the Xbox One has a lot of nice features. One thing I do really like is, I don't know if they added this very recently for the 20th anniversary or if it's been around for a while, but I went into like customizing your themes, and you can make the background of the console's like UI just look like the fucking weird green orb of the original Xbox, and I switched to that.
Oh, I didn't know that. I got to do that.
And it's great. Like, that's fucking awesome. I appreciate that. I like having my weird, just like amorphous blob orb of green Mountain Dew, whatever, game fuel. I don't know what that shit is that powered the original Xbox. But it is back with a vengeance on my Xbox Series S, and I do like that a lot.
Well, how have you been enjoying the Master Chief Collection? You said you've just binged the shit out of Halo, so how's that experience been?
It's been fucking awesome.
Because I did this earlier this year, too, on PC, co-op with my brother, so I've also had the experience of replaying all of them.
Yeah. I should say it's fucking awesome with the asterisk of Halo 4 and Halo 5. Like, again, I'm halfway through Halo 5. I could have finished it last night if I really pushed myself.
But then you'd have to play more Halo 5.
But then, yes, I got halfway through it, which did only take me about 2 hours to get about halfway through that game, because it is a very short campaign. Because they're like half of the levels in that game are just like cutscenes, basically, that they just put into the mission list. Because I saw the mission list, I'm like, oh, there's 16 missions? That's crazy. That I actually was like, no, there's like 5 missions in this game that they've just split up in different ways. But yeah, so I have binged the shit out of Halo, which is just something I feel like people probably have noticed on the podcast that kind of every time Xbox comes up, I've said, I just really want to fucking play Halo. I should just get one of these to play Halo. And I was going to do it when we moved here to Texas, and my dad like switched fully to using my old PS4, and I got the Xbox One back that I basically had given to him and that he had used for a long time. I'm like, oh, I've got this Xbox One. Now I can like just use it at my own leisure without having to take the TV from him or anything like that. And I was going to load up Master Chief Collection on it, and then discovered that the Xbox One was like the great casualty of the move to Texas, is that it died. And so I had to bury the Xbox One out back. I didn't actually bury it. You shouldn't do that. It's got like batteries and shit in it. But I metaphorically buried the Xbox One in our backyard. And so that was one of the reasons why I picked up the Series S. It's just like I have been craving Halo. Particularly, I've really been wanting to replay Halo 3, ODST, and Reach. Because I was thinking about this last night. I'm pretty sure the last time I played those games maybe was in the lead up to Halo 4. Because that would have been around the last time I had an Xbox 360 as my main console, right? Because Halo 4 came out in 2012. I played a lot of fucking Halo 4. I played that game for about a year. I tried to convince myself that I liked that game way more than I actually did, now that I've replayed some of it. Me too. And then in 2013, I switched to the PS4, and then I got an Xbox One a little bit after the Master Chief Collection originally came out to play the Anniversary Edition for Halo 2. And so I played the Halo 2, replayed Halo 2 then, and then at that point, Master Chief Collection was a fucking like dumpster fire in terms of like the multiplayer. You just couldn't do anything with it around its launch. And then when the Halo 5 came out, I played Halo 5. And then like 3 something years ago, we did the Let's Play videos that we did for Halo, and that would have been the last time I played Halo 1. So I played Halo 1 and Halo 2 in the last 5-ish years, but it's been almost 10 years since I had replayed through 3 ODST and Reach. And if there are people who are like newer to the podcast that have jumped on with like Weekly Suit Gundam and stuff like that, they might not know, because Halo has been sort of like missing in action for 6 years between the release of Halo 5 and now. Like, Halo is, and Halo 3 in particular, is one of my favorite games ever. And like, I grew up playing Halo. The Xbox and the 360 were like my main consoles for a long time. Like, so much of like my social life in middle school and high school was playing Halo 2 and then Halo 3 with my friends. And like, I've just like, Halo was a really important franchise to me when I was a kid, to the point where I had read all the books, I had read the comic books, all that shit. Like, I had consumed every piece of extended Halo media up to the release of Halo 3, which at that point is when Bungie, after Halo 3 came out, became independent. They still made ODST and Reach because they had deals with Microsoft, but at that point 343 Industries in 2007 was made, and then they became sort of stewards of all the expanded media stuff, at which point the expanded media became way worse, and I tried to keep up with it and just kind of fell off because it got really bad. But in that period of like the classic Halo stuff, like, it was my fucking life. The last time, when I calculated it a couple of years ago by going through Bungie Net and doing like rough calculations, and by a very light calculation of like, on the very safe side, I've spent at least a month of my life playing Halo 3 multiplayer over the course of the 4 years of high school. Like, that's how much it was like the thing I did every day after I came home from school was log on. So it's like, Halo was hugely important to me. And it's, you know, kind of become a weird thing, and we'll talk about that with Halo Infinite and stuff in Halo 4 and 5. But replaying those games is like, it's such a fucking treat. It's such a joy. The Master Chief Collection at this point is the most impressive collection of older games out there. Like, I think
easily, it's
anything
phenomenal.
Even close. I mean, it you know, it was a long journey to get here, because again, you know, playing it at launch was rough. But now it is both on the campaign side and the multiplayer side. You know, it is you know, complete on the campaign side. You have all Reach 1, 2 with Anniversary, 3 ODST, and if you want, Halo 4 is on there also. You've got all those campaigns fully represented. Firefight for ODST and Reach. You can even play Spartan Ops from Halo 4 if you really wanted to. You could do it. The Forge mode for all the games that had Forge is in there. All the multiplayer suite is in there, and then the multiplayer is set up with this really great, I think it kind of took it a bit from Titanfall 2 and made it more robust, but it's less a playlist structure, and it's more you kind of select qualifications of, I'd like free-for-all, 8-person free-for-all, and I'd like it to be on Reach 1, 2, 3, no 4, please, which I think everybody just says, please don't put me in Halo 4 multiplayer. I don't think you could. I have to imagine if you really wanted to. I don't even know if you could, because I can't imagine who's looking for Halo 4 multiplayer. But you can select by games and either put all those in there or say, I only want Halo 3, and then you could sort of like whitelist a bunch of modes and say, I would be cool with capture the flag modes, Slayer modes, SWAT, like Rumble Pit, or like Team Action Sack, like party type modes, and then just go and search, and it just will go by whatever you have whitelisted and put you into any assortment of matches. And then, so if you had all that shit highlighted and there was someone else who only wanted to play Halo 2 SWAT, you might just get put into a Halo 2 SWAT game with those people because they just said that, and that was one of the things you were okay with getting put into. And it's a really cool, very robust way of like sort of evolving the playlist concept that Halo 2 invented. Well,
it's funny you're saying this, Sean, because I've been playing it on and off for years now, and so I'm so used to like how they've done it, and I fucking love it. And I missed it immediately on Infinite, because Infinite has the worst menus I've ever seen in a game ever.
We'll talk
and you're
about
right.
Infinite.
It's fucking genius. It's Master Chief Collection multiplayer is still 100% fun. It's so amazingly good.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I have been playing a lot of the Master Chief Collection multiplayer, and particularly like Halo 3 is fucking great. Obviously, all the stuff of like, all the games are 60 frames per second. They are higher resolution. They load faster. They have HDR now also. So it's like all the bells and whistles. It's just like it's such a great collection of games. Like it took them a bit to get there, but now it is there. And if you are like me and you have been absent from Halo for a long time because you just switched to PlayStation or whatever, and 343 has been very messy with how they've handled the franchise, like it is a very good time to revisit that stuff if you're picking up a Series S or Series X or anything like that.
Or have a PC, because I can tell you right now, it's so good on PC.
Yes, or also you can play all of them on PC, which is rad. So yeah, like that has been like just one thing that is awesome, is just having this collection be like kind of like what you always dreamed of it being. And it's funny because the 2 points I've sort of hit the game were I hit it at launch, and then I've hit it now at like what is probably like kind of, I have to imagine they're not going to add a lot of like new stuff to the Master Chief Collection at this point, because I would assume that 343 is going to be pretty all hands on deck with Halo Infinite. So it kind of feels like I hit the like sort of incomplete, like it sort of like is, this big ambitious project that is sort of crashing into the ground, and like everything was on fire. And now I'm hitting this like, and we have gone through the fire, and over the course of like 60 plus years made it this like perfect collection of these games. And it is cool to just like check in on it when it came out and then check in on it now, and it's like the difference is huge, and it's awesome. In terms of the campaigns, obviously like the campaigns are awesome. Like Halo 1 and 2 I had replayed relatively recently, and they're great. The main thing I think doing this has made me realize is I do think like pretty definitively for me Halo 3 is the best Halo game. I think I would maybe even argue it is straight up the best campaign also. Like it would be either 3 or ODST, which are kind of like weird to rank against each other because they're very similar but like have like different styles they're going for. Halo 3 is much bigger in scale. ODST is much more tightly paced and more intimate in scale. But there is something about having played those like 3 ODST and Reach for the first time in, again, almost 10 years at this point. Like they really stand out to me as like pinnacles of what Bungie was trying to achieve with Halo, and this kind of like Halo 3 in particular just feels like this perfect video game with incredible...
It's peak Halo. It's
like on the multiplayer side, the weapon balance is perfect. Like the battle rifle in Halo 3 and the assault rifle, and like the balance between those weapons is something that I think Halo has always struggled with trying to recapture past that point. The battle rifle in particular is like one of the most fun sort of precision rifle type weapons in any shooter I've ever played. It's like so precisely tuned for the role that it's supposed to have. The way that equipment works in Halo 3 is so much fun. The fucking bubble shield is just one of the best, smartest, cool like mix-ups in the history of first-person shooter gaming for me. Like getting that bubble shield and like the mind game of Halo 3 is so much fun on the multiplayer side. And on the campaign, like playing all the campaigns like one after the other, and I did it in like release order, not story order or whatever, because in the Master Chief Collection they have it like listed by the order that like in the timeline they happen. I did 1, 2, 3 ODST Reach, 4, and then now 5, and playing them like that, it's like so cool to see like some of the ambitions of Halo 1 and 2 get achieved by 3 in terms of like the scale of like the destruction and the maps in that campaign, particularly when you get to the Covenant map and the Arc map, like 2 of the latter levels of the campaign, which are huge and wide and open, and have these really rich, really inventive designs to their encounters that give you so many different kinds of tools, whether they're vehicles and weapons available to you. The like how well they designed the AI and the behavior of the brute type enemies in the Halo 3 and ODST campaigns is also just hugely impressive. Like it's just, as a game, it is one of the best games ever made. There are a few things more exciting and fun in a video game than in the campaign for 3 or ODST, or also Reach can do this, of blowing up one of the Covenant dropships and like just laying into it with a Scorpion or rocket or whatever, and then finally it blows up and the whole screen lights up. And this is one thing that when you get to 4 and 5 and Infinite, like 343 has never been able to do this, of like the sense of the scale and the ferocity of explosions and gunfire in classic Halo is so incredible. And the artistry of Bungie with like these plumes of like purple and blue smoke shooting everywhere, the whole screen exploding, like everything shaking, the incredible sound design. There's a sense of like of epicness to what is happening that like no modern shooter I think really captures. The closest is like some of the stuff in like Titanfall, and particularly Titanfall 2, like could get a little bit of that vibe. But Halo 3, there's just a size and scale and scope and just like a mastery to the execution of every single level of that game that like few games can hope to equal. And that no game in that genre I think has ever equaled.
I agree completely, and like every year that goes by, because I unlike you, Sean, I have never had like the time off Halo thing because I've always had an Xbox or a PC or something in sight, and it's something my brother and I go back to. And like I said, I did all the campaigns this year on keyboard and mouse, and now I tried playing Infinite with a controller and realized I can't do it anymore. But anyway, I every year that goes by and I go back to Halo 3, I think Halo 3's art style just holds up more and more and more. The only thing that looks dated in Halo 3 is the faces, and they're kind of funny, and that's fine. And everything else, the art style is just so perfect. The colors and the way everything kind of interacts in the world, and the skyboxes and all, and the lighting systems, that no matter how much time goes by, it hasn't aged a day, and it looks so much better than most games now. And like, not most games I should say, but like most shooters certainly that have just very much fallen down the Call of Duty path of being kind of, and Call of Duty can look good for what it is, but like the kind of like gray, quote unquote realistic color schemes, I just am so tired of. And Halo 3, you'll never surpass it. It's the perfect art style, it's the perfect balance. You're right. I mean, that was peak Halo, and there was kind of no way to go on without, like, I don't know, diluting it in one way or another.
Yeah, and the other thing about those campaigns, particularly 3 ODST and Reach, that like is something that like 1 and 2, because I think a lot of production issues with those games never could quite achieve, is how utterly distinct every single level of those campaigns are.
Yes.
And this feeling of like, it is true of also the multiplayer map design in those games, which I think also Halo 2 had with a lot of its multiplayer map stuff, of where it's a game that is so motivated by like ideas and concepts, that it feels like it's a bunch of people sitting down with like trying to come up with like effectively like a thesis for what this campaign level is or what this multiplayer map is, and then refining and building on that idea so that like there's this sense of purpose and intention to what has happened to make this like a very distinct experience and like a distinct argument for Halo effectively. And every single campaign level has its whole own thing. Like the only level in those 3 games that I think is like a little bit rough is the Cortana level in Halo 3, and that's mostly just because of like how much it interrupts you with like the Gravemind and Cortana stuff coming. And I actually have kind of grown to really like the gameplay and like the flood stuff and the like weird gross aesthetic of that level is honestly like has become more appealing to me over time, as like an interesting kind of library-esque experience. But other than that, which I think is like a level that is a bit rough around the edges, like every other level in all those games is just like incredible, and there's so much invention and creativity at the core of them. And then there's Halo Reach, which is probably actually, I think Halo Reach is the game that to me improves the most from the Master Chief Collection transition, because that was the game that on Xbox 360 had some frame rate issues. It had a weird motion blur implementation to, I think, cover up some of the frame rate stuff that game had that looked really awkward, and all that is cleaned up. It's a perfect 60 frames per second. That game also has a great aesthetic, but is like an intentionally kind of desaturated aesthetic compared to the previous Halo games. It's a little bit more kind of like what Halo 2 does, only I think it's a richer aesthetic than what Halo 2 goes for. And the HDR pass on that game, I think, really like helps bring out the depth and the richness to the color work that is there, which in my experience watching like a bunch of 4K Blu-rays and stuff has been, I think, the thing that has stood out to me is I think it's actually things that have like very subtle use of color and are like working really well in a more limited color space. Those are the things that benefit the most by HDR. Like Halo 3 looks nice with HDR, but Halo 3 always, the colors really popped and always looked good. There's sort of like HDR is just kind of making that stand out a bit more. Whereas Reach, I think because it is working in this really kind of elegant, more limited color palette, the HDR pass on that game really like brings out the rich nuances in the colors that are used. And Reach stands out when you are playing all these games back to back to back of like Bungie taking the opportunity to, with their last Halo game, like really trying to do something really different with Halo while keeping it like Halo. This like way more grounded, somber like war story and sort of general aesthetic that game goes for, and a lot of the way that like the weapon sandbox is used, and the Covenant enemies are positioned as being a lot more intense and a lot more frightening. All of that really works super well, especially when, again, you're kind of playing them one after the other, and it really stands out. I've always really loved Halo Reach, but I think I enjoyed the campaign the most playing it now, because of like the contrast it serves with the other Halo games and how much it is able to be its own thing and feel like it's almost its own like shard of Halo, because it, you know, it also like the story completely contradicted like the Fall of Reach book and everything like that, but it's fine because it's like it feels like it's almost like an alternate universe Halo or something to me is what Halo Reach is. But it still has like that Bungie magic and creativity to it. And that was
it's
also,
still so good. Yeah. The only game that suffers in comparison to is 3, kind of, and it's still it's so phenomenal.
Yeah. So and then I guess like as I'm going down this list, Halo 4 is ironically the game that has aged the worst on the Master Chief Collection. My God, there is stuff that I liked about that game at the time, like the sound design and some of the story stuff with the Chief and Cortana, that now just does not work to me. I find that game like holistically very kind of like garish, and sort of like mistuned and misaligned. It is a thing that I think is very true of 343's whole approach on the franchise at this point, which is like they really chase after trends, which is very different than like Bungie did its own thing and set trends or didn't. Like, you know, like Halo 3 outside of its like supplementary features like Forge, some Forge stuff, and like, but mostly like theater mode and playlist stuff and like custom game stuff. It's like obviously Call of Duty 4 was the far more influential first person shooter of that period. But Halo Reach wasn't chasing after Call of Duty 4. Like Halo Reach was iterating on doing its own thing based on Halo 3 and like things that Bungie wanted to do. So it's like Bungie always felt like with Halo, they just sort of went by their own pace, made the games they wanted to play, and that was that. Like Halo 4 feels like you can like see this the Microsoft like business suit spreadsheet that was used to be like, well, we need this like, you know, teal orange like Michael Bay Transformers aesthetic on everything because those movies make a lot of money, and we need like big expensive cutscenes, and we need a lot of story shit and a lot of dialogue, because, you know, that's what people are into. You know, it's like that was around the time when you were getting a lot more first person shooters having the player character talk, first person shooters having cutscenes, because it was not super common before that point. Lots of games were a bit more in that like Half-Life-y kind of vein. And Halo was almost like a little bit distinct for having as much of a focus on story as it did, which is not much by a modern game standard. And Halo 4, it's just like the game is trying its best, but looking back on it now, it just is like, it is a complete and utter miss to me. The campaign is a complete slog. The story is incredibly obnoxious. The only stuff in the story that kind of works is the Chief and Cortana stuff. And even then, when you have just replayed Halo 3, Halo 3 handles the Chief Cortana relationship so elegantly with like 2 or 3 lines of dialogue that Halo 4 spins like a movie script trying to deliver and can't even do. The Forerunner and Promethean enemies are awful. They are terrible to fight. They are super bullet spongy. The campaign levels, like half of the levels in the game have basically the exact same Forerunner aesthetic, and it's very bland. The redesign to the Master Chief's armor is completely disastrous. The whole art aesthetic of the game is just ugly and garish, and it's like, it is technically impressive, particularly for a 360 game, but what they're like technically executing on is a very bad art design, that doesn't evoke any of the nostalgia of the previous Halo games. It just feels like they've gone with a completely different art style for no particularly good reason, other than to make it look more like contemporary action blockbuster movies of 2012. The score of the game is okay in and of itself, in the sense of if you listen to it as music, it's fine, but it's implemented so poorly in the game that it just ends up being a bad score for the game. And then the main story between the Master Chief and the Didact and the fucking Librarian, I had completely, utterly memory holed and just like erased from my existence the fact that that game makes the Master Chief a fucking Chosen One character. I had totally forgotten about that. He's the Chosen One made by the fucking Forerunners, and like him and Cortana were like destined to be what they are by the fucking Forerunners and the Librarian and all that shit. And it's like, oh my god, it is one of the most obnoxiously awful main stories and main plots I have ever seen in a video game. And it is incredibly embarrassing to replay that game.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. It's not fun, and I mean, honestly, the biggest thing is just the fucking enemy design and the combat encounters. It's just bad at like the fundamentals of Halo, and it's just not fun.
Yeah, and you can feel how much it's chasing Call of Duty. Like the campaign is so boxed in. There are very few there are no open vehicle sections. There are very few sections that feature vehicles. Every section with a vehicle takes place in one boxed in area, and then you abandon that vehicle and move on to the next room. So it basically feels like you are moving down a series of corridors into like rooms that slightly expand to have an encounter in them, and then you filter back into a corridor. Like the campaign's design in a Halo sense, if you know, because it's really pulling from Call of Duty and a little bit of Gears of War kind of campaign design. That works better for those games because those are those games and they're made for that kind of style, whereas Halo's combat isn't. But like in Halo, it kind of feels like if you were trapped in like a Sisyphean hell of like you were just in that section of Assault on the Control Room where you're going between Forerunner rooms in those like identical hallways with the little arrows on the floor into big circular rooms where you fight a group of enemies. If you're doing that, but it never stopped, and you're just in that section of Assault on the Control Room literally forever. And then sometimes you come to a bridge and you fight through the bridge, and then it's back to those corridors, but you never come out to like where you get the tank or you did in the Warthog and the rocket launchers and like where that level opens up and gets really good. Instead you're just stuck in the boring section of Assault on the Control Room from Halo 1 for eternity. That is just what Halo 4's campaign is.
Yep. But hey, at least it's finished. Unlike Halo 5.
Yeah, no, Halo 5 is just a bad game. Like, I'm only like halfway through it, and it's just... I mean, Halo 5 just feels like a game that they just had to put out. I think that is what it is. Like, it's just... They didn't... Like, for whatever various reasons, game development is very hard, but for whatever reasons, like, that game was just clearly not ready to come out, and at some point they just said, it's good enough, let's polish it up as much as we can with what they had, and just put it out there. Because it's like, there just isn't a sense of, like... iteration. Like it feels like it's the video game equivalent of your first draft is basically what Halo 5 is. And like a first draft that wasn't all the way done. And you're just like, okay, well, we just got the first draft, like we're about 2/3 of the way through it. We know we're not going to be able to finish it up, so let's just like do spell check and fix all the grammar mistakes, because it's not like Halo 5 isn't buggy or anything. It's not unfinished in that sense. It's got a AAA level of polish in that respect. But is like the actual game design is just not there. And I will finish it because I don't remember almost anything that happens in the story of that game. It's like I kind of just want to get to the end of it, and it's not that long. But it was a slog to get even just to the halfway point of replaying that game.
Yep.
and that's basically my Halo adventure, at least with the classic stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's fun to kind of take that walk down memory lane as we're about to head to Infinite. And, you know, people know my thoughts. I think you and I generally agree on the Halo games. You know, I love them mostly until you get to 343. And it is just, it's really stark at this point how much 343 has just fumbled the ball. I mean, they've done a good job on the Master Chief Collection as, like, stewards of those games. But and it's a thought I've had every time I load up Halo Infinite, is I just fundamentally do not think this group of people understands what made Halo tick at any point in its Bungie lifespan. And a lot of, I play it and I go, oh, and I don't really think they want to make Halo games. I think they want to make something else, and I think they feel very constrained by having to make Halo. Again, Sean, I will recommend to you and anyone else with an Xbox or with these resources, I think Gears of War 4 and 5 are interesting games. I think they're really good. I think 4 is sort of a safe, normal Gears of War game, but like it's good. And then 5 blows the doors off and is just a phenomenal. And I'm talking about the campaigns here. There have been mixed results on, I think, the multiplayer for depending on who you talk to, and I haven't dug into it all that much other than Horde mode. But it's kind of the polar opposite of how 343 has treated it, where I think Gears has gotten more interesting in its post-original creator era than I think it was, and I think Halo's the opposite.
Yeah, I definitely want to do the same thing I did with Halo. I want to replay the old games too for Gears.
Yeah.
Because it's just been such a long time.
For me, it's been forever. I want to do that at some point.
Yeah, because I will definitely jump into the Gears of War stuff also because that is one of the reasons why I think I went with the Series S. It just went ahead and pulled the triggers. Also, I've had it in the back of my head I wanted to play Gears 5 because not just you, but like you and then other people have all said it's really good.
It is. So, there you go. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Infinite, because I talked about it on the last podcast, but you hadn't gotten to play it yet, and I was a little bummed out because I wanted to share thoughts with you on it. I mean, I gave my whole rant, and I'm just curious, do you agree with what my general takeaway was last time?
Yeah. I think it's a thing of where I think the like core running around and shooting in Halo Infinite is the best it's been for 343's games. And I think it is like, I mean, part of the thing is that they have just kind of like tried to make it closer to Halo 3 is like things like sprint of being like sprint is almost pointless in Halo Infinite, which like sprint just should have never really. Sprint was a mistake in Halo Reach, and even in Halo Reach, it was at least an armor ability. So you had to make the choice to not have something else in order to have sprint in the first place. But sprint being a like thing that everyone can do just breaks the pacing and the structure of Halo combat. It has always been like that. It was a bad thing in Halo 4. It was a bad thing in Halo Reach. It was a bad thing in Halo 5. They have now just like moved everybody's movement speed up and then made the sprint a very just tiny little increase in speed. And so like there are little things like that where it feels like they've kind of realized the glut of just like disposable weapons of like, I had forgotten just how many weapons Halo 4 and 5 have, where like, because there are 3 different factions, every faction has a weapon for every single type: shotguns, assault rifles, pistols, SMGs, battle rifles, DMRs, sniper rifles, it's fucking grenade launchers. Like everyone has every weapon in that game, and it's just a complete mess. I have some issues with some of the weapon sandbox in Infinite, but it is way better than what 4 or 5 was like. Feels more like 3 or Reach in its general approach to weapon design. So there are like some things like that I do think Halo Infinite is better than 4 or 5, and I can see a version of Halo Infinite's multiplayer that I would be really into. The problem is there are lots and lots and lots and lots of things around the edges of Halo Infinite as it currently exists that just make the game feel very like toxic and frustrating to me. The most important things I think that I hate about the game is like the map design. I generally find really poor. I think that is where it is the least like classic Halo, and where it is like them trying to like that sense of like they kind of maybe don't want to fully just do Halo, because the way that power weapons work just is boring, and the map design is very Call of Duty 3 lane-esque influenced. They're still stuck on this small arena like map of where everything is kind of symmetrical, and everything has like these like very narrow kind of claustrophobic lines of sight, and there's no sense of like in classic Halo maps you have like positions of power, is what like the community called them, but it's like places like the tower in Lockout that you have a good line of sight to like a huge section of the map, or the 2 ends like the 2 sniper towers on the pit that you generally in Team Slayer you'd want someone posted up on and kind of control those areas and kind of control the flow and movement of things on the map. And that's one of the key things that makes up the mind game and the tactics of classic Halo is power weapon placement and good clear lines of sight that dominate certain sections of the map that you as a team, if you're playing a team game, want to coordinate and control in order to control the flow of enemy characters, enemy players, and then be able to have more members of your team be able to have good line of sight with good weapons on enemy players for most sections of the map. And like controlling and dominating that flow in the movement of players is more important in Halo than being able to shoot someone in the face. And that's the thing that makes Halo really fun and interesting. And that requires good map design, and it requires like creative map design. The maps in Halo Infinite are like afraid of having power weapons on them. So most maps in Halo Infinite only have 1 or at max 2 power weapons. And by power weapons, I mean, for Halo Infinite, I mean, they only have basically 3, maybe kind of 4 if you count the shock rifle. But it's a sniper rifle, rocket launcher, and the skewer, because they've sort of depowered the shotgun and turned it into something else. The shotgun's not a one-hit kill. I guess there's like the sword/gravity hammer, but I don't know if I've ever seen that in a non-Fiesta map in Halo Infinite. But I guess
I've seen it in Big Team. Okay. But yeah,
I haven't played much. I haven't done much big team battle because I really don't like that they made that 12v12. I think that was a huge mistake because it means that you can only have, you have to, if it's 12v12 BTB, old Halo had it at 8v8. You can make a map that works well on both 4v4 and 8v8. You can't make a map that works well for both 4v4 and 12v12. Like, the scale is totally wrong. And that's one of the reasons why it feels like there are like no maps in this game, is because old Halo didn't cut off you from playing 4v4 on Valhalla because Valhalla was a big map. Like, 4v4 on Valhalla and Halo 3 is fucking awesome, but it also worked well for 8v8. None of they big team battle and like normal Slayer are basically treated as different things entirely in Halo Infinite, and I think that is a massive fucking mistake they made.
Yeah, I agree completely, because just you get two sets of shitty maps instead of one. And the Grav Hammer, when I did use it, and my brother commented on this last night too, it's been slowed down considerably, so it's much harder to use.
Yeah, because I've used those weapons in Slayer, or in Fiesta Slayer, and it feels like, I suspect the Gravity Hammer has been made as more of an anti-vehicle weapon. Like, their approach to the weapon sandbox is to have like made every weapon fit very specifically into a fairly narrow niche, which I prefer to Halo 4 and 5's like just weapon vomit, but it does mean that I think the overall balance is that weapons are not as fun to use because they feel like, and I saw this comment I thought was well phrased, of where 343 has like really over-designed their Halo games, and the weapon sandbox feels over-designed to me. It feels like it's too concerned with being really competitive and not as concerned with like making the weapons fun to use. And it's like powerful weapons are fun to use, and so it's like weapons in Halo and like Bungie Halo games in general. I think Halo 2 is the only one that has an issue with this in some cases, but like 1, 3, and Reach, like all the weapons in multiplayer felt powerful and engaging and could be used in enough scenarios and motivated by the maps they were intentionally placed on to make them like worthwhile, and you always wanted to go get another weapon when you spawned. And that meant engaging with the map design and the weapon sandbox was much more rewarding. Whereas most of the time in Halo Infinite, you kind of might as well just stick with the assault rifle and pistol, because other than the like 3 power weapons that exist in the game, of which only one probably will spawn on the map you're playing on, the assault rifle and the pistol are just about as good as anything else, other than probably you want to get a battle rifle if you can get one.
Yeah, that's what I've found, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I also just find there's all these new guns that make absolutely no sense to me. Like, you describing them makes more sense, but I think that's it, is that if it's not the assault rifle, the pistol, or the battle rifle, anything I pick up feels like it has one use and I haven't found the use for it yet. And so it's just gibberish. And it feels like there's a million guns that do nothing other than the 3 main guns that you get automatically. It sucks.
Yeah. I mean, there's just like a lot of guns where it's like you have to be in a very particular scenario, like the plasma carbine. Is one that it's like a 3-round burst plasma gun, but it works only at this very particular range where it's like effective, where it's like slightly outside of the effective range of the assault rifle, but like it may be a little bit closer than you would want to use a battle rifle for. And even then, all the plasma carbine does is shred shields, kind of like the plasma pistol, and then you have to switch to your normal human pistol and get a headshot. And that is like fun to do, but it's so much work for something that like, but you kind of might as well just use the assault rifle in that scenario and just move in closer. And it's like, that's kind of where the weapon balance just feels like it's too concerned with trying to be balanced and fit everything in a very narrow range and damage type niche, and less interested with just making weapons fun to use. But the point on the maps ultimately I want to get to is like playing Halo 3 multiplayer via Master Chief Collection and Halo Infinite multiplayer back-to-back is very eye-opening. Of like, you'll play on a map in Halo 3 like the Pit, right? Classic, great 4v4 Team Slayer focused map. That weapon, the Pit, or that map, the Pit, has 2 sniper rifles. It has 2 shotguns. It's got a rocket launcher and a sword. It's got like 8 battle rifles, I'm pretty sure, camo,
right,
and overshield, and 2 brute shots. Like, it has, what was that, like 6 total power weapons, 2 power-ups, a full range of precision weapons for 2 full teams to be able to carry at the same time, and then a couple of like mid-tier weapons like the brute shot that are a bit more of that like Halo Infinity, like take it or leave it, like it's good for its like niche, but you might not want to have it unless you're like planning to do something particular with it. And an equivalent size map in Halo Infinite is like that training map, that kind of looks like the Pit because they're both like designed after training areas. And that map in Halo Infinite has exactly 1 power weapon, and it can be a sniper rifle, a skewer, or a rocket launcher, because weapon spawns are semi-randomized. The weapons are put into tiers, and their spawn points are cycled randomly depending on what the match is. So you might play Team Slayer on that map, in the middle might spawn a sniper rifle, or another match, it might just spawn a rocket launcher. There's no way of you knowing, which is also a huge mistake, and it, I think, kind of ruins the general flow and control and tactics of the game. But that sense of like, there's one power weapon and that's it, it's fucking boring as shit. It's like, it's just not fun, and it means that the general tactics and flow of classic Halo gameplay, to me, don't function properly in Halo Infinite, and it makes matches feel very rushed and disposable in the way that Call of Duty games feel, which is fine for Call of Duty because Call of Duty is Call of Duty, but like, I've found my sense of like, when I start playing Halo Infinite, is the more I try to use Halo brain to play that game, the less effective I am. The more I try to use Call of Duty brain to play that game, the more effective I am. And I'm like, and it's not that I'm bad at either of them. Like, I've been performing well in Halo Infinite. I get positive KD spreads. I win games. I've been doing really well in Master Chief Collection. I win games and get positive KD spread. Like, I can play these games well, but like, I feel like when I try to play the game more tactically in Halo Infinite, I get punished for it. When I try to play the game more tactically in Halo 3, I get rewarded for it. And that is, for me, the most substantive issue with Halo Infinite. On top of that, you have then all the things around the edges. The playlist situation is a fucking disgrace. It is like embarrassing that there are 3 or 4 playlists in the game. There's quick play, there's ranked, there's big team battle. So there's 3. Halo 2 is literally the game that fucking invented playlists. Playlists didn't exist before Halo 2, because everything before that was PC shooters that had server browsers, or a couple like Dreamcast games that would have server browsers. Halo 2 invented the modern concept of matchmaking and playlists, and Halo has had, since I was in fucking middle school, Halo has had for like 16 years at this point, Team Slayer playlists, Team Objective playlists, free-for-all playlists, split between ranked modes, and then also your whole like Rumble Pit, Team Action Sack, which is your party modes, SWAT, Social Slayer, which is your unranked Slayer, but that includes things like Team Snipers and things like that. This has been a thing for like almost my entire life, and for almost the entire fucking span of this franchise.
Almost the entire span of online console gaming.
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Because obviously, like, where Call of Duty gets its multiplayer design is just stealing it from Halo 2, as Gears of War did, as like every fucking modern shooter does. Like, to the extent that a lot of PC players got pissed off after Halo 2 came out, because they just wanted server browsers, because that works really well for PCs, and it doesn't work as well for consoles. And it's like, the idea that the franchise that spawned the concept of playlists, and a thing that, like, and Halo has always done it better than everybody else, because Halo has the most interesting objective types and has, like, the most customizability in its gameplay, which then leads to cool modes like Infection and Griffball and Fiesta and things like that that are really rich and interesting and change up the game in fun ways. That Halo has always had that, and it's always been fine. It's never been a problem. It's never been hard to find a fucking team objective game in previous Halos. It's like not an issue. So like this game having no real option to narrow down what you want to look for, especially when the Master Chief Collection over here like is doing it better than old Halo games did. And that is a thing that 343 made, and then you're forced to play this like fake use, basically rolling the dice to play what you want. It's hugely frustrating. And the reason I assume why it is that way, because the only thing that makes any sense to me, is because the game is free to play, and the way the challenge system works is completely fucked, and they are selling challenge swaps. So like the challenge system is, you know, you get this, it was before basically the only way to get XP. Now you can still get like a decent amount of XP just by playing the game, which is nice. But you still have these challenges that could be things like, I have one right now that I've had for this whole week, which is win one oddball match. I have played probably 3-4 hours of Halo Infinite multiplayer this week, had that since the beginning of the week, and I have not played a single fucking oddball match, let alone been able to try to win one, because it just hasn't come up. And I feel like if you are making these challenges that I have no control over my ability to complete these challenges, because I don't have playlists, like a lot of them, I don't have free-for-all where I can take the team thing out of the equation entirely, which would also make it way easier. And free-for-all's always been one of my main playlists that I like in Halo, so that not being there at all is very frustrating. But like if you're doing all of that and making it so like I have to roll dice to see if I get a decent challenge that I can then complete on a match type that I have no control over, and then you are selling challenge swaps in the fucking store for real life money that you could go spend money on, or if you unlock them in the battle pass, to then change those challenges and roll the dice again to see if like maybe the next time around it's just get 3 melee kills on an enemy Spartan, and it's like, well, I can do that in my fucking sleep. Great. Like, that is the most toxic, fucking negative, insidious, disgusting, like, feedback loop I've seen in a game I've played in a long fucking time. And I've played, like, a lot of gacha games, too, that have that kind of shit. And this is something that, like, is bad for any other game. For Halo, it's, like, nauseating to me. It's, like, for this to be, like, what this franchise has turned to, that it's not just like it's free to play, it has to monetize itself, whatever, I'm fine with that, but like they have gone with just the most predatory bullshit awful version of free to play I've seen.
Why do we have to be fine with that though? Like,
Yeah.
Why did they have to do it? This is fucking stupid. Like, I have a real frustration here, Sean, that I think the gaming press has been treating this game with fucking kid gloves, and I don't get it. I don't like they've not been covering in any like real in the way they try to do with gacha games all the time. I have to see the fucking stories about Genshin Impact, which is like 99% less predatory than this thing. And like it's just, and I guess it's because those games are scary and foreign. I don't know.
Just because they're popular in China is why like people hate the gacha games.
Yeah, it's like, and Halo Infinite can come out and, oh, well, they said something nice on Twitter about eventually fixing it, so it's okay. Oh, there's no playlist right now, but they said a month after the official launch in late December, maybe they'll add SWAT. Really hard.
Maybe they'll add Team Slayer into Halo.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll add, it's like not even SWAT. SWAT would be like, okay, like it's everyone's favorite fucking, or like a large portion of Halo's population's favorite game mode. It's dumb that it doesn't have SWAT. But it is at least a kind of specialty game mode. The idea that it doesn't have fucking Slayer as an option of the playlist is insane.
It's insane. And if you know, the fucking guy from 343 gets on Twitter and says, we'll add it eventually, then the whole press is just like, okay, they're so responsive to their fans. And like, there's the like opinion side of it that I just think it's a bad game that looks bad and plays bad and is a bad game. And I don't need the whole game press to agree with that. But there's this whole other side of it that like, this is an early access game that is coming out. It is not finished in any fucking sense of the word. And they are putting it out, and I guess it's technically free to play, but it's very, predatory free to play. They're going to be selling this campaign for $60. Yeah. God only fucking knows what state that campaign is going to be in when it comes out. It won't have co-op. This is a Halo game that will be launching without playlists, without Team Slayer, without SWAT, without finished graphics, without co-op campaign, without theater, without Forge. Like, there is no other way to look at this than like a bad early access situation that they aren't calling that. And I'm really, really frustrated with how the game press has just like decided whatever, they get a pass. I don't get it. It's really fucking weird to me. It feels insidious.
Yeah, I agree with you that there's this feeling of like, especially having like replayed all the old games, of like standards have fallen so fucking low, right? That like this is a thing that is acceptable. Like if you remember when fucking Oblivion came out and they put the horse armor in and charged $5 for horse armor in Oblivion, which was dumb at the time. And it was like one of like the first like little pieces of downloadable content, what we would now call a microtransaction, but at the time that concept and term did not exist yet. And people got fucking crazy about it, and like everybody blew up and like, harassed people from Bethesda, which is awful. Like people should do that, but that was like the scale of response from every sectors of, right, like every gaming website, like IGN, like stuff like Polygon didn't exist at the time, but like GameSpot, Kotaku, which existed still at the time, or existed at the time on like a lot of like modern gaming websites that weren't around back then. All those websites ran a bunch of stories like making fun of that game and horse armor, and it became a running joke in the gaming community. And now it's like in Halo Infinite, it has fallen so far that like if you in the Fiesta event unlock the free samurai armor that I think is very ugly, but if you unlocked it, you could use it. You only have access to one color by default you can use on that, which is gray. And if you wanted to make it blue, you had to pay $10 in the microtransaction store. And that was the only way to make it to make it just blue. Like, it's not a fancy, like, here's like a bunch of like ornate shit on it. It is just like basically when your default armor, where you have your generic selection of colors, which is less than you've ever had in Halo. I want to talk about that in a second, but like that's generic selection of colors. You can at least pick blue by default. And if you're a real Halo player, you do pick blue by default because you're always on the blue team no matter what. So you've got to fucking rep. The way the game's multiplayer works is that you're blue. So fucking pick blue color. If you don't pick blue, you're not a real Halo player as far as I'm concerned. You're like not even playing the actual match. You're just cheating. And so like the idea that each armor core and their whole customization thing is a complete mess, and I only halfway understand it. But you have these like sort of base versions of armor, like so you have Mark 7 is the standard one, the Mark 5B is the Reach one, which is the one you get if you pay for the Battle Pass, and then there's a Samurai one that was available during the Fiesta event that it will come back in a week or two or whatever the fuck it is. Those are their own like core thing, and no colors or pieces for those armors can be shared with any other of those base armors. So if you unlock a color on one thing, like on your Mark 7, you cannot use that color on your Reach armor, or you cannot use it on your Samurai armor, or unless they change it, which if they do change it, there's going to be a bunch of weird fucking refund bullshit they'd have to figure out because people have already spent money buying these colors. Like any armor in the future they add, you might have to buy blue again if you just really want a blue Spartan, and that's it. And that is like, at its core, the thing with the customization is that they have ripped and shredded the player customization stuff in Halo to pieces in order to sell it back to you at like exorbitant prices. Like, I know they are the standard prices for lots of free-to-play shit, like Apex and Overwatch. Like, it's all overpriced as fuck. I understand that now. But at least they sell you like characters and full like redone skins, not here is the color blue for your Spartan. And the thing that, like, even more than any of that shit that frustrates me personally so much is that I have since 2004, since November 2004, I have had the same Spartan in every Halo game. I have, for most of my life, played as a Mark 6 Spartan with steel gray as my primary color and cobalt blue as my secondary color, and I've had the same fucking emblem, which is now the blue team emblem, or like you're the eagle team emblem or whatever in multiplayer for Halo Infinite. So it does exist. It's the blue eagle with two swords, but you can't select it in Halo Infinite as for like your own custom emblem. Like that basic customization that I picked in Halo 2 when I was like fucking 12 years old, I have done in every single Halo game. When I booted up Halo 4 to look at my shit and start playing that campaign, I saw my Spartan, and it was a Mark 6 Spartan with steel gray as my primary, cobalt as my secondary color, and at that point they had already taken out my main emblem, so I had to give up on that. And I can't do that in Halo Infinite. There's no way to do it at launch, even if I spent money, or even if I completed the Battle Pass. I think you can get the like Mark 6 helmet or something if you complete the Battle Pass, but my colors don't exist because it was custom. Like, you picked your own colors. My emblem doesn't exist because it was custom. You made your own emblem and you had control over the colors of the emblem, the background, like whether or not certain optional features like the swords on mine were there or not was a custom thing. And a lot of that like has been in every Halo game since 2, including 4 and 5. And there is no way for me to make my Spartan currently in Halo Infinite, no matter how much I play the game or how much money I spend. And that is, to me, like this like really alienating thing as someone who like is a massive fan of this franchise. And it was so important to me growing up. And I cared so much, and I loved my character. It was one of my favorite things about Reach, was being able to have my custom Spartan character be in like cutscenes and shit was so cool. And having your custom character shared across all the modes of the game. And to get to Halo Infinite, and I have to just like settle for a blue Spartan that has like generic armor and just a genericized emblem that I have no ability to meaningfully customize. And if I want to get anything that's mildly more interesting than that, even if it's not even the stuff I'd want, I have to fucking pay up or shut up. It fucking sucks.
It fucking sucks. And I mean, Sean, you talked about like how far standards have fallen. Halo 3 was not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. 2007, yes, it's a long time. That's the year you and I started high school. It's a long time now. But that's only 14 years. It's only like 2 generations ago. That game launched with one of the best campaigns of all time, a full multiplayer suite that was great on day one, had all the modes you wanted. They added overtime, but it was there. It had full customization of everything. It had, including like your game modes and your character. It had theater. It had forge. It had all of this shit, and it was a $60 game, and you went and bought it, and you put it in your Xbox, and it was there, and it was done. And we're given a pass to Halo Infinite 14 years later, coming out in parts, completely unfinished, predatory in its money, all of this shit. We have they're just hiding the campaign from people at this point. I don't know. I fully expect that thing to be a disaster because they don't want people to see it. Again, it's like not just standards have fallen, there just are none.
Yeah. It's sad. It's just
and what you always hear is like, but game development is hard. And I'm like, it was also hard in 2007. Like
good games exist. Like
yeah.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare fucking was amazing. Like and right. That it had a battle pass, it had all of its whatever the fuck, but I didn't give a shit about any of that. I played that game for like more than a year basically on multiplayer. And like it had everything and more that I would expect from a normal Call of Duty multiplayer suite. It had more modes, it had more customization than Call of Duty 4 had, than fucking Modern Warfare 2 had, and those were my two main like sort of reference points for Call of Duty. And it was a normal $60 game that had a campaign and it had all that multiplayer shit. And it's like, yeah, they monetized the fuck out of it in other areas, but I never had to care about that, and it never mattered. And that game was fucking awesome. And like to see this of where like back in the day amongst my friend group, I was like the hardcore Halo guy that like I would always push for like, yeah, Call of Duty 4 is fun, let's go play more Halo 3. And I tried to like, and I had a couple of other people that would always want to play Halo 3, but I tried to drag other people back. It's like, come on, let's get into like big team battle, let's do some custom games, let's do this. And like now I feel like I'm like, no dude, let's go play Call of Duty. Like I'd much rather play Modern Warfare's multiplayer. I'd have to make some fucking space for it, but I'd much rather download Modern Warfare's multiplayer and play more of that than play more Halo Infinite, and that makes me really sad.
It's tremendously sad. It just sucks. And I am just confused by the whole kid gloves approach to it, of like, I guess we're just giving them a pat on the back for getting it out the door, quality regardless. Like, you can be sympathetic to all of the problems game developers have, and you and I think are, and I think we have a long history of that on this podcast. That doesn't mean you have to excuse bad and sometimes predatory game design that comes out. And I just genuinely don't get it, that this has to be like a fucking participation trophy for this game, making it out the door after 6 years. I don't care. It's bad, and people shouldn't play it.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I talk about a game that's really good?
Yes, go ahead.
Sean, I spent the last week playing the Guardians of the Galaxy game. I got this on Black Friday. This is the Square Enix published game developed by Eidos Montreal. The last game they developed before this was Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Is that? Yeah, that's the third one.
That would be the third one, yeah.
Yes, and their second Marvel game at Square after the Avengers game that Crystal Dynamics, who did the other Tomb Raider games, put out last year. And this was a game you can go back and listen. I was pretty skeptical of on the E3 podcast because I just wasn't really sold on the trailer.
I remember having to sort of like fight for the game a little bit when we did the E3 thing, being like, yeah, I think there might be something here if they do a good job with it.
Yeah, that E3 was so bad that I was kind of extra cynical on everything. But yeah, I don't think they advertised it perfectly, but I got it like half off on Black Friday for PS5, and then I started playing it like the day after Thanksgiving when I got back from like traveling. I kind of binged it pretty hard over the last week. And it's a great fucking game. Have you played any of it, Sean? Are you planning to?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I would like to play it, but I have a lot of games on my list that I really want to play. Yeah.
Yeah. You should. You will love it. I just know you will love this game, Sean. I think, like, my main takeaway is it has more flaws than a Insomniac Spider-Man, or I think, like, Batman, the later Arkham games. But I would generally put it on the shelf with those as just a great, like, top-tier superhero video game. And the main thing with Guardians of the Galaxy is that the writing is phenomenal. It is just one of the best written AAA games particularly from like a Western developer that I've seen in a very long time. It captures the voices of these characters so beautifully, and it walks an interesting line because, one of the things Insomniac Spider-Man has going for it is that there's so many interpretations of Spider-Man out there already that I think it's easier to plant your flag and make your own for like the media space, because your average gamer or movie watcher knows 3 different cinematic Spider-Mans and 7 different animated Spider-Mans and a million, all of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so if you want to make your own Insomniac Spider-Man, I think there's more space for you to do that. With Guardians of the Galaxy, the only thing 99.9% of people buying this game will know is the James Gunn movies, right? Is that a fair thing to say?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the characters in general, particularly this version, has not existed for long enough that,
Right.
like, it's like that. I mean, maybe the comic books, even me, not the comic books. And then, like, I think Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is the other thing that the Guardians of the Galaxy have been in.
Yeah. And so you're mostly going to compare it to James Gunn, and the core 5-person team in this game is the same as the core 5-person team in the James Gunn game. They do have other characters in there who are not in the James Gunn movies later in the story, and they also have Mantis is in the story as well, who's also in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. So you're going to be directly comparing it, and they take some stuff that, to my knowledge, is purely James Gunn, like the Peter Quill's music and stuff like that. And so things that are very much from the James Gunn movies. And so it has a really hard lift, I think, right off the bat of, like, you are going to be comparing it to 2 really good movies, that you will know. But I think it's astonishing how quickly they establish the voices of these characters as distinct, even though some of them are very similar. Like, I would say Groot, Drax, and Rocket are largely pretty similar to the James Gunn characterizations, and it's pretty subtle over the course of the game how they change those characterizations. It's Gamora and Peter who are much more drastically different than I think how James Gunn characterizes them. But no matter whether they're drastically different or not, they just, like Eidos Montreal, their writing team, and then the actors who are employed doing these characters own those characters so fast, because I think there's so much heart behind the writing. There's just a vast amount of thought that I think has gone into the characterization of each of the main 5, what arc they're going to have over the game, how they play, what role they play on this team specifically, and how they bounce off of each other. And the writing, which there is just fucking reams and reams of writing in this game, because this is a fast-talking team that is constantly bickering, and so that just they never shut up for this 20-hour game. They're always bouncing off each other. And if anything, it could use more writing, because there are some combat scenarios where lines get repeated a little too much. But I feel like that's where I feel mean to the developers saying it should have more writing, because it already has a fucking just metric fuck ton of writing in it. And it just all characterizes the characters so well. My favorite is what they do with Peter Quill. He's, I think, I would say, the most drastically different from the James Gunn interpretation, where the James Gunn Chris Pratt version is the, like, narcissistic man-child who like has never grown up and kind of only cares about himself and turns out to have a heart of gold. It's like the Chris Pratt archetype. It's honestly just a more buff version of his character on Parks and Rec at a certain point. But like that's sort of who you have, the like stuck in the past man-child who's sort of a narcissist. And that's not how they characterize Peter Quill in this. He does have hang-ups from his past because he was ripped off Earth when he was a kid and saw his mom die in this version. But it's not the same, like, he's fully just, like, endlessly connected to childhood nostalgia. He can't let go of it. There's much less of that than in the James Gunn. He is really more of just, he is a sweet, kind of stupid guy who is on a team with 4 other beings who are stronger and smarter than he is. But the thing he does that brings them together is he has empathy and he has a sense of optimism, and he is able to wrestle this group into a team because of those qualities, and I think they are extraordinarily good at exploring that characterization. I think the voice actor is just fantastic in portraying all the nuances of this character and the journey he goes on in this game. I really also like what they do with Gamora. Gamora is quite different than the Zoe Saldana version, and I like Zoe Saldana in the movies 100%. She's great. But I think they made smart choices in characterizing her differently here, one of which being they do not do any kind of romance between Gamora and Star-Lord, which allows her to have a lot more interesting relationships with everyone, including Star-Lord, where their relationship in this game is much more they're friends and they trust each other and they have pretty frank conversations, and I like that it's just this like friendship space. Rocket, they do fairly similar to the James Gunn in that it's a lot about his like trauma from the past, having been like tortured and experimented on, but they do it just beautifully. Honestly, like, he is the most similar to the James Gunn incarnation in that it's a lot of how he has a toxic relationship with people because of how tortured he was and that he just cannot trust, and he has a lot of fears and hangups. There's this one little thing that starts out as a joke with Rocket and then gets explored in quite a bit of depth, which is that over the course of the game you realize he's deathly afraid of water. He hates when it rains. He doesn't want to get wet. He gets mad at you when you make him go in water. And over the course of the game you realize where that comes from, and it becomes one of the like deepest bits of characterization in the game. It's just extraordinarily well written. Those are like the main 5. Mantis is also completely different and to my understanding closer to the comics incarnation. She's not really at all like the version in the James Gunn movies, who I also like a lot, but their Mantis here just steals the show. She's great. And then they have some other characters who I will not spoil, but just if there's Guardians of the Galaxy characters you like or that are in the comics that haven't been in the movies yet but wish were, they're in this and they're written phenomenally. It's really cool. I just love all of that. I think the story they've put together for it is very, very good. All of the supporting characters are great. I think the overall arc of the story is fantastic, and it definitely keeps you engaged. The game has some flaws in that I think the main combat system it's okay, but it's not good enough to support a game of this length and that leans on combat this much. The main thing I've been comparing it to when people ask me is Uncharted 1 through 3, which is where those games have fun combat for what it is, and like you and I have talked before about how they allow you to kind of express the idea of being in an action movie, and that's fun and silly, but the combat is nowhere near good enough for the amount of combat in those first 3 Uncharteds.
Yeah.
Like when you really I always think of this with the end of Uncharted 2, which is just this big combat gauntlet that it really breaks down when you put it under the stress test, and that's exactly what I would say about Guardians of the Galaxy. It's fun, but when you have to do it for like 2 hours on end over and over again, it's just extremely monotonous and there's very little depth to it. And so I think it doesn't kill the game by any means, because that's not what you're playing this game for primarily, but it is not like an Insomniac Spider-Man or Batman Arkham where the combat is like infinitely deep on top of the game being great in all these other ways. I do think the choice, though, to make it you play as Star-Lord only is incredibly smart and is 100% the right decision. I think you being Star-Lord at all points of the game, you're never directly controlling anyone else, and so these other characters are always their own people. Even in combat, sometimes when you suggest they do something, they don't do it because things are going on in there, and they'll say something about it. Like, it's honestly the best version of your non-player character teammates are their own individual people I've seen in a game since Persona 3. And I think, and generally RPGs are better at this in general because you can write a lot without as much production value put into it. But it has that kind of Persona 3 quality of, these are your teammates. They are not your, direct pieces on a chessboard.
Yeah, they're your teammates, not your puppets, right?
Exactly. Your teammates, not your puppets, and it's just... And they make you... And they really give you that positionality of you are Peter Quill, and that's your POV for the game, and everyone else is their own person, and I think it's very, very smart. Overall, I would say the combat kind of aspires to be something sort of Ratchet and Clanky, which is like a bunch of big, silly weapons that are all bouncing off each other, and I think when you put this next to Rift Apart, which just came out, or the 2016 Ratchet and Clank game, you see where this could be better and where it suffers, and I think it needs more moves, more crazy shit going on, more enemy variety, all of that, I think, to make it deeper and more interesting. But it's fine for what it is, and it gets you through the game. I think where the game shines is the character stuff, and then the art direction is unbelievable. It's jaw-dropping. Every planet you go to, and they save the best for last, because the last big planet you go to near the end of the game, not the last area, but the last specific planet you visit to, I'll just say it's a part where you're hunting a big monster. I took a bunch of screenshots that I'm going to use as screensavers because they're fucking amazing. Every planet looks so amazing. When you're in the inside of ships, the art direction there is cool too. It's an absolute graphical stunner. I will say it is another game where this is the first game on PS5, Sean. This is the first game I've played at 30 FPS because it has a quality mode and it has a performance mode. But the performance mode is very drastic in its cuts. You go from... So quality mode is a locked 30, but also a locked 4K. So it's full native 4K. And the 60 FPS mode drops all the way to 1080p.
Right,
so,
yes, I heard about this, yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty drastic, and there's nothing about this game that needs 60 FPS. It's kind of like a Naughty Dog game or something. You're fine in 30. So I was fine with that because it's just that much of an eye candy game that I think this is the kind of case where I would sacrifice performance for visual fidelity. I wish you could have both, but it's fine as it is. I was not bothered.
Eventually there'll be a PS6, you know?
Yes, yeah. But hey, Sean, that's pretty impressive. I made it over a year without playing a game at 30 FPS on this fucking PS5. How crazy is that?
Yes. It'll be exciting. Like, I think because the adoption rate has been... Or the adoption rate is fast, but, like, the ability to produce the consoles is not keeping up with the demand. I think it will be a while till we find out whether or not, for sure, this is actually going to be the thing that sticks around the 60 frames per second thing, or they're going to take 60 frames per second out of us for our hands kicking and screaming when they're like, no, we need more effects, like we need bigger open worlds, like we gotta bump it down to 30. You're like, no, I can't do it. Like, even when I played a little bit of Forza, and I haven't played a lot of Forza because I've been doing so much Halo stuff, but like I do think the motion blur stuff is very good, but even then I had to be like, no, I can't play something that's not 60 because it's been over a year since I did it. It's like I just can't do it.
Yeah. But anyway, and I'm sure the performance mode, it's still fine. It looks good, you know, but it's just, it's quite the cut, in resolution at least. And it is such a gorgeous game. It makes such good use of color. Like, honestly, it reminds me of like classic Bungie. It's like crazy environments with really cool colors.
Yeah,
I would
all
very
the
much
trailers I've seen, like, I think the Bungie thing of like they feel like they did the like Bungie Skybox shit.
100%.
Yeah, like it's got this very bright, cool alien aesthetic that like very few games are able to execute on that kind of art style. It's cool to see a game be able to do it again.
Yeah, so I love that. I love just walking around and exploring the environments because it's very much I would compare this to kind of like a Naughty Dog game in its structure. It's a linear game. You go through these environments, but the environments have extra paths to take and you can find collectibles and stuff. But the fun part is Rocket, Raccoon, and everyone else will make fun of you for going on those paths. There's a lot of stuff early in the game where, like, there'll be a fork in the road, and Rocket goes, I can see, we have to go this way. But the collectible is over here, so you go the other way, and Rocket is like, you never fucking listen to me, God. He doesn't say it, he says flarkin. This is, by the way, this is the most foul-mouthed game I've ever played. It's just instead of saying fuck, they say flark, but they say flark more than I've ever heard a swear word in a video game. So Rocket will yell at you and be like, why don't you ever trust me, Peter? And he's like, I just need to scope it out, man. And it's very funny. It makes the real reward for like going off the beaten path is having everyone yell at you. It's very funny. So I love all of that. I love getting the little collectibles. It's just a very compelling game. I also think there's some pacing issues. The second half of the game has this weird issue where I kept thinking I was about to play the last level, and then there would be 4 hours left. And so it's just a little stop-start, but there's a lot of rewarding stuff within that, and I think it has a good story conclusion, even if the last boss is kind of a slog because of the combat being kind of bad. But, you know, I put it on this way on Twitter. I have played plenty of games with sort of combat. I have played very few games with, like, writing and environmental design and all of that as good as Guardians of the Galaxy. And to me, like, that more than makes up for combat being kind of meh, because, whatever, I've played meh combat, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice to hear that, like, it feels like it is the thing that, like, they pitched the game to be at that E3 thing, and it was, like, I think it was, like, a hard pitch of where everyone went in expecting, like, oh, it's a Guardians of the Galaxy game, which that had kind of been leaked that they were going to make, that they were making this Guardians of the Galaxy game. I think everyone's assumed, oh, it'll be, like, a big team-based, maybe 4-player co-op kind of thing. You play as all the different Guardians and all that. And a lot of people having this, like, you only play as Star-Lord, and like, what? And it's like, it's got this big story focus and all that kind of edge to it. And then the E3 pitch, like, was really on hardcore on this, like, we want you to feel like you are the leader of this team and that you are bringing everyone together, and you're like, and it's story and it's about their relationships, and we're building that, and that's like the concept, that's the thesis, it's the idea of what drives the game. And I think it was like a hard pitch because it's like more high concept pitch than, we want you to feel like you're all the different Guardians and you get to use all their abilities, and just now you want to be Rocket Raccoon, you can be Rocket Raccoon. You want to be Gamora, you can be Gamora. That's a way easier game pitch to make. Everyone's played that game. And it's really cool to hear the, like, this is the higher concept, more like intentional, very creative idea of making a game about teamwork and being a leader with like this sort of like, you know, rough sort of like found family sort of team dynamic and sort of having to wrangle them all together. Like that's a way cooler concept, and it's really awesome to hear that they like fully nailed it, because it is like the thing that hearing their E3 pitch, I like imagined the idealized version of this game being. And it's cool that they got allowed to make it, because I have to imagine that team had to fight really hard in a lot of meetings of being like, no, we're not having them play as Rocket Raccoon. This is a game about Star-Lord and being a leader. And I just have to imagine that there were like lots of tense meetings with publisher people and stuff like that did not want that and wanted the easy marketable Rocket Raccoon and group game and shit like that, and them sticking by their guns and really nailing it, because everyone who's played the game seems to love it so much. Like that's just super cool to see.
The easiest one sentence pitch I could give for it, Sean, is it feels like what would happen if Naughty Dog made a superhero game, which is that it is this linear, story-focused, very highly and beautifully produced, wonderfully written, very human, great performances. Maybe a little slightly older Naughty Dog in that like the gameplay isn't the most impressive thing in the world, but it's more than makes up for it in other areas. I mean, it even does the Last of Us Left Behind, Uncharted 4 thing of like there's sections where you walk around the world and look at shit, and people talk to you and all of that. So it's a very good game. I think you should. If you can play it before top 10 time, Sean, I think you should. It's on sale still.
That's not going to be physically possible.
Okay,
that's fine. Unless we do 2021 top 10 sometime in like November 2022, I don't think it'd be possible.
But it is very good. Pick it up on sale. One other thing I will say about it. It does have like a big 80s like pop soundtrack for basically there's this one like game mechanic where in the middle of battle, when you build your battle gauge up enough, you have a huddle where everyone comes up to you and they say words to you, and you have to figure out the right leader speech to give them as Star-Lord. And if you nail it, then you get a big power up, and Peter puts on his tunes and it plays one of those songs in battle. I love it every time it happens. None of the cuts on the soundtrack are anywhere near as deep or interesting as like what James Gunn chose for his movie, but they're all pretty fun. And I realized there's not nearly enough games that have like actual like pop music just in the flow of gameplay. It's basically just rhythm games or racing games. It's never like a fun action game, and it is fun to be the Guardians running around shooting people while Wake Me Up Before You Go is playing. Like, yes, I like that. Why don't more games do stuff like that?
Yeah, like it's not a big pop song, but it made me think of the end of Max Payne 3 has this big lyrical song that plays, that it's more like a sort of like mellow Eurobeat kind of song, but it is fucking sick. And it is, yes, like games should have lyrical music play during the gameplay more often in the way that...
That's why we love Persona with all their lyric songs, yeah.
It's like, in like, certain types of movies do really well with having really cool, like, soundtracks that are curated and timed and, like, fit the tone of the movie. And it's like, video games just don't almost ever do that, and it's very frustrating. Although I will say, like, one extended look I did take at the game of, like, I watched a little bit of someone's, like, video of, like, a Twitch stream, I think, that they did. I just watched it on YouTube. But I think the game has like a streamer mode, because that like takes out all the licensed music, and it was that seed happened, and it was hilarious, because it's like they all got into the huddle and he gives the big speech and they're like, let's go, and he puts on the headphones, and then nothing, the music is completely silent. Like there wasn't even a like fill in, like let's just have a generic like video game track to just play here. It was just like no music at all and just video game sound effects. And it's like, this is not anything on the game. Like it's cool that they even put the mode in there. This is all like music licensing is horse shit. Video game streaming needs to, like, Amazon and Twitch need to get their shit together and like get something done to like make streaming more legitimate. But it was fucking so funny watching that scene. It's like, let's go. Boo, 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 boo. It's just video game sound effects and no music. It's just so fucking good.
I do think one of the most inspired ones they put in there is they put in Never Gonna Let You Down, the Rickroll song, the Rick Astley song. And like that is a played out song until you get to like, Peter Quill gives his big speech and then you're fighting with the Guardians as that plays.
Yeah, I could hear it in my head. If the song had been memed, nobody would even like take a second look at it. It's just a good song.
No. Yeah, it is a good song. So anyway, I loved Guardians of the Galaxy. It's a very good game. And honestly, please make more superhero games. Like, it's so much more interesting to me than live-action superhero movies. Like, I've been thinking about this, Sean. There's plenty of live-action superhero movies I like, but that is the worst way to adapt a comic book.
Yeah.
Animation, animated movies, animated TV, video games, any of that is such a better way to do it. Because, like, the other thing is that this Guardians game, there's so much more backstory for them. They do this whole thing about, like, the Galactic War, and, like, Thanos is dead at the start of this Guardians game because of all this stuff that happened, and so you have all this backstory, you have all these fucking fun, like, logs and characters you meet, and all this stuff that the movies, as good as they are just never going to be able to do. And that's before you even get into, like, the animation of it all that is so fun. And, like, yes, gaming is so much closer to the serialized storytelling medium of comics. More of this, please, I love it.
Yeah, it is, like, we do have, like, you know, every once in a while we get these, right? We get our Batmans, we get Spider-Man, now Guardians of the Galaxy. That, yeah, like, it makes so much sense, because also, obviously, like, superhero stuff just fits game design really well, because it's like, you get a bunch of cool ideas sort of handed to you of, like, God, how do you make a Hulk game, right? Like, what are the things you do to put the Hulk in a game? They made that original Xbox Ultimate Destruction game, which is fucking awesome. They need to make a new Hulk game because that was sick. But it's like, it you know, Spider-Man, Batman, Guardians, like, there are these rich ideas that, like, the pathway to making them like video games is so clear. Not to say that any of it is easy to do, but, like, some of the, like, the concept stuff, they give you all these really good ideas. And then also, like, a lot of times when you watch superhero shit, like, I watch it and I'm like, this feels like it's a video game. Like you get, like, you know, Spider-Man sneaking around and knocking people out. I remember, like, Daredevil had a bunch of stuff like that where it's like, God, Daredevil's just doing a stealth sequence from a Daredevil video game that should be made because it would be good, but nobody's going to give them the money to do it.
God, do a Daredevil game and, like, make it like L.A. Noire meets Ninja Gaiden or something, where you're investigating cases as lawyer Matt Murdock and then beating the shit out of people. I just pitched a really good game.
It's just, yeah, like, the pitches for superhero games are so good, the people do need to make more of them.
It's cool, and, you know, I will even defend the Square Enix Avengers game, because if it didn't have the service game component, if that game had just been a big drop in drop out co-op campaign, it's really good for that. It's got good writing. It's got fun characters. It's got Miss Marvel. It was, and I liked playing as the different Avengers. It's the service game bullshit that was, like, tacked on top that ruined it.
Yeah, more video games with good superhero shit.
Yep. Anywho, I've been playing that. I've been playing more Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. I don't really have too much to say except, you know, what I wanted Pokemon Brilliant Diamond for was to have a chill, easy but, like, fun and, like, reassuring game on my Switch that I could play in between other things during this, like, busy last month of the semester. Mwah, perfect for that. 10 out of 10 in that zone. It's not the best Pokemon game ever. It's not the worst. It's perfect for that, and I actually think Ilka deserves more credit for a lot of the fun graphical things they've done in it, because it's kind of a shockingly nice-looking game that people are making fun of because it is more of a portable nice-looking game than a TV one, but it is very nice-looking. And yeah, that's my stuff. I've been seeing a bunch of movies. We'll talk about that later, because I will probably do a top 10 movies list this year when we get to that, like, early January. We'll be doing our top 10 stuff. But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Any other stuff from you, Sean?
Now that I have to talk about my Persona shit. I told you I can't forget.
Oh, okay.
I have to put it. It's in my brain of, like, I played it 2 weeks ago, and I have to make sure I fucking talk about it, because it's very easy when you skip a week to forget to talk about the thing you played right after we finished last podcast. So,
well then, Sean, would you like to finish this week with your Persona 5, the Royal filibuster?
Yes. Well, first I'll talk about Persona 5 Strikers, and then I'll finish up with Royal, because I'm not super deep in Strikers, because I started playing it, and then the day after I started playing it, I bought the Xbox, because it was like, that was just, like, the timing, and it was like, well, I'm going to be playing a lot of Halo. And basically, I've been playing Persona 5 Strikers is I've, like, put an hour into it basically before I go to bed, and that's actually been a really good time. I really love Persona 5 Strikers a lot. I'm, like, finished the second dungeon, so I'm kind of, like, into the meat of the game at this point, and it's a fascinating game. It is not what I was expecting, because for people who don't know, Persona 5 Strikers, or Persona 5 Scramble, the Phantom Strikers as it's called in Japan, because they always get the better titles, is a co-developed game between Atlas and Omega Force. Omega Force, of course, being the Koei Tecmo Dynasty Warriors people, who make Dynasty Warriors, but also make your, like, Fire Emblem Warriors, Hyrule Warriors, Dragon Quest Warriors, all the spin-offs and stuff too. And so this is, you would go into it with that saying, and then this is the Persona Dynasty Warriors game. And that's not really what this is. Like, it has Dynasty Warriors elements, but it is not a Dynasty Warriors game. It feels like a almost like PS2 or even like a PSP kind of like game concept of like, it's a lot of like different interesting elements mixed together. Of it's a lot more on the Persona 5 end than it is the Dynasty Warriors end. There's no like big maps with different regions that you go and like defeat like an enemy general in, and you take over that zone, and any of that kind of stuff. It's not mission based. It is structured kind of the way that Persona 5 is, of where you have your party of members. You get 4 of them at a time out of all of your Phantom Thieves, including there's like a couple of new characters in the game. Unfortunately, none of the Persona 5 Royal stuff is in this because those games were developed simultaneously, so that is kind of disappointing that you don't get Yoshizawa, the new party member from that game, in here or anything. But there are some new characters that kind of fill similar roles in a weird way. But you go into these, they're not palaces from Persona 5, they're called jails, but, you go to the cognitive world, there's a person whose desires have been distorted in some sort of monstrous way, and you as the Phantom Thieves must make your way through this kind of dungeon-like jail structure, completing different mini-objectives, solving small puzzles, getting into combat encounters along the way, defeat the boss, and then move on, and there's lots of story and dialogue that fills that in, and the combat is based around elements and weaknesses. So you have all the different elements from Persona 5, the 2 combats, the 4 the 4 like fire element kind of ones, the gravity, psychic, light and dark. All of that is represented. And enemies have specific weaknesses, and if you strike their weakness, you can do all-out attacks and finish them up. Like, it has so much Persona 5 DNA in it, that it is a way more sort of fascinating fusion of the Muso or Dynasty Warriors style with whatever its sort of parent franchise that the partnership is, than any of the other games like this I've played, which generally are like, it's a Dynasty Warriors game with a couple of little extra elements from its parent franchise that the collaboration is from, but it fundamentally is a Dynasty Warriors game through and through. This is not that.
No, it's not. And people might remember when this game came out, I did play the first like 7 hours or so. And it kind of threw me off because I'd been deep in playing a bunch of other Dynasty Warriors games. I'd been playing Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. I platinumed One Piece Pirate Warriors 4, and then I went back and went to Pirate Warriors 3, and I was having a ton of fun with that. And I think because I was expecting Dynasty Warriors, I was so thrown off that I need to go back and finish and like play all of Strikers because I couldn't figure out how to play it. And I think if I went back now, I've been away from Dynasty Warriors for a while, I would be able to like, because you kind of have to start from scratch. It's, yes. If you're expecting Dynasty Warriors or just pure Persona 5, it's neither of those, but it is closer to the Persona 5 thing.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a wholly unique game, which is what makes it feel like it's this PS2, PSP-ish era game to me, of where it's like, there is no game that plays like this. There's no game that has combat structured the way this game is, because it has large groups of enemies that you fight in like individual encounters, and the way you get into encounters is exactly like Persona 5. You have enemies in the overworld map that you like can ambush, or they might attack you, and then they explode. But instead of exploding into a small group of enemies and you have a turn-based battle, it's explode into a big group of enemies, and then you kind of are corralled into like a big zone you're in, and then you fight them. And your combat does have, your light attack on square, your heavy attack on triangle. You do, if you hit square triangle, you do an uppercut. Like, so it has like the Dynasty Warriors like kind of basics of some of that combat. But I think the thing that is like deceptive about it is that Dynasty Warriors combat is very, very mashy, right? It's very like you're just hammering the attack buttons all the time and killing huge swaths of enemies. If it's the like racing game thing of like, if you're playing an arcadey racing game and you're never not holding down acceleration, you're fucking playing it wrong. Or if it's Mario and you're never not dashing, you're fucking up. Dynasty Warriors, if you're ever not attacking, you're playing the game wrong. Like, it's just like, those games are just, you're attacking constantly forever. This is not that. If you're just mashing over and over again, against normal enemies, you'll kill them fine. But against the larger like boss or kind of mini boss encounters, that will get you killed almost immediately. Because it is way more about like timing your attacks between enemy attacks and then using weaknesses to stun enemies, because that's actually its main capacity against boss type enemies. So if you're fighting an enemy and it's weak against fire, and you have on in your team, or you have a fire persona on your main character, because your main character can fuse and switch personas just like in a normal persona game. You want to get a character that can use fire, and you have SP that allows you to just use elemental attacks immediately as long as you have enough SP to cast them. Otherwise, you also have some of your combos, and as you play and level up characters, more combos unlock. But some of your combos also trigger persona abilities that don't cost SP. So for every character, your square, 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 triangle will always trigger their basic elemental attack. And so the combat is about dodging enemy attacks, like finding where there's a space where you can get in there. And if you've got SP, you can use your SP to start to weaken them, or you use your combos and tie your combos in with free persona skills based on whatever combo you're using to open up enemies, weaken them, stun them out of doing their powerful attacks, so that you can keep your attacks up and don't have to worry about dodging as much. And then ultimately they have this kind of like guard meter that breaks over time if you hit their weaknesses, and then eventually if you break all of it, you get a big all-out attack that usually kills enemies or does most of the damage on the boss if they don't die in one hit. And that is such a cool, weird, unique combat style that is a true fusion of the concepts that underlie and drive the mechanics of turn-based Persona with the more fluid action, like jumping around, hitting buttons kind of combat of a Dynasty Warriors, and really kind of find a way to bring those together rather than what you would normally get, which is let's take the name of a spell from Dragon Quest and then just have it be one of the combos in your Dynasty Warriors Dragon Quest game, and then you never think about it again. And that's fine. Like, I played Dynasty Warriors Gundam 3 for like 120 hours or something. Like, I have nothing against normal Dynasty Warriors games. But there is something about this that I think is more interesting to me because I've played so many Dynasty Warriors games over the years. This approach of taking some of the ideas from one, some of the ideas from the other, and finding a really unique fusion somewhere in the middle. Like, it's just a really unique, very creative game. That also, the story is not as, I think, sort of hard-hitting as the main Persona 5's one is, but it's the best storytelling, I think, any of the Persona spin-offs I've played, and I haven't played Q, which obviously is like the other major one, but of like all the fighting games and the dancing games and stuff like that, this one has, I think, a much better sense of capturing the tone and spirit and character of the original game and the original cast. And I love the new character, the main new character in particular, Sophie, who is like this AI girl who you encounter very early in the game, and her vocal performance is amazing. There's also this detective guy who I'm based on like the opening movie, I'm pretty sure becomes a playable character, but so far I haven't hit that point yet. But he sort of follows you around, and he early on you kind of introduce him into the concepts of the cognitive world and all that, the sort of supernatural shit that underlies Persona. And his mind is completely blown, and it is the scene where they take him into the cognitive world is amazing because it's the like only time an adult person who's not the villain of the game has ever encountered directly the supernatural edge of a Persona game, and it's just like his whole world is utterly destroyed because he's an adult and he can't cope with it. And it's incredible. And the voice actor in Japanese is Shinichiro Miki, who, if you're a Weekly Suit Gundam listener, you would recognize as Lock-on Stratos from Double O Gundam. But he just gives...
That's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, he gets this just incredible performance of where he's always acting and sounding super cool, but you know deep inside he's freaking the fuck out because it's like, what? There's this subconscious world, and these kids have like crazy superpowers, and there's demons, and like they're stealing desires in this like subconscious world that is causing people to go crazy in the real world, and it's like, and he's like, he's basically like a cop for the, I forget what the exact term is from the Japanese government, but he's like this bureau of like the secret police, more or less, that is investigating the Phantom Thieves and this new surge of incidents that the Phantom Thieves are solving. And then the other thing about the story I love is that the structure of it, after you finish the first dungeon, is it turns into a road trip story of where you are not just stuck in Shibuya for the whole game. It is about you getting in a big fucking camper with all your Phantom Thieves buddies and driving across the country. Like, so far they're heading to Sapporo up in Hokkaido, and I'm not there yet. But like, you kind of stop along the way and are encountering other like, oh, we detect there's another jail over here. Let's stop over here. And I imagine if you've been to like on a road trip in Japan, like I imagine you would recognize all the famous locations they stop at. Like they stopped at this like famous statue of Masamune Date and stuff like that, and kind of there's this like tourist sightseeing like buddies, like college age or high school age buddies on a road trip quality to it that is just super, super endearing and very fun. Because it's just such a great cast of characters, and it's the full voice cast and everything from the original game, at least in Japanese, and it's super fun.
It's a cool realization of, if you don't know the history of Persona 5, it started development at the original Persona 5 as a road trip across the world. And it would have been going to different places on Earth. And then they decided, after like some politics stuff went down in the world, like, nah, we should focus this on Japan and tell this story. But my understanding is part of why there's stuff like the pyramids in Persona 5's palaces is because of early prototypes. So doing this spin-off / pretty direct sequel as a big road trip in Japan is like a cool realization of that idea, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny because it is also like, it's clearly pulling from the image from the end of the original Persona 5 of all the main characters in this like big van as they're driving the main character back to his hometown, and that's kind of the note that game ends up on, which is funny because Persona 5 Royal does change the ending a little bit so that is not the exact beat that Persona 5 ends on anymore, at least in Persona 5 Royal. It is very funny that it's like that both these games like it coexist, but neither of them talk to each other because they're both being made at the same time and they came out around the same time. But yeah, so obviously I'll talk more about Persona 5 Strikers when I get deeper into it. But so far, my impressions are very positive, and I'm glad that I'm reaching the end of like Halo 5 and all this shit, because I do want to like sit down and like give a day to that game of like really going hardcore and like putting a lot more time into it, because I've just not had time with my like Halo obsession for the past 2 weeks. Persona 5 Strikers is awesome. Also awesome is Persona 5 Royal. That game is amazing. Like it, everything from original Persona 5 applies to Persona 5 Royal with like a bunch of awesome gameplay tweaks, and I've talked about that in other podcasts. But I think the thing that is really fascinating about it to me is it's very like delicate and quite elegant, I think, how they work in the major new content, which is all at the end of the game. And it's actually positioned in a way that I didn't expect. Like, I didn't know, I like intentionally avoided hearing too much about the specifics of what happens to Persona 5 Royal, because I knew I was going to play it. I didn't want anything unnecessarily spoiled. But I had always kind of just assumed that I knew that, you have Yoshizawa, the new main character. You saw, obviously, that they're doing new stuff with the Akashi character, and that there was a new confidant or social link character. I had always assumed, and then there's a new dungeon. I always assumed that all that stuff would come in positioned after the Shido dungeon from the original game, but before the main ending of Persona 5, so that the ending would be very similar with some modifications, and that you would sort of stuff in the, like, whatever the new stuff is, in this kind of gap that you'd make by moving the original ending later than it originally was. And that's not what it is. Like,
because that's what Persona 4 Golden does, right?
Yes.
With all of its new stuff?
Yeah. Although Persona 4 Golden's new stuff is not nearly as substantial as the new stuff in Persona 5 Royal, which I think is why I think I had this impression that, like, this would be structured that way, because Persona 5 4 Golden kind of jams all of its new stuff in gaps that they make in the existing game by giving you the nighttime ability to like explore more at night, and then just like, I mean, you don't really have extra social links that take up the same amount of time, because it's structured differently with Persona 4 Golden than how Persona 5 Royal does it. What Persona 5 Royal does is, like, the vast majority of the game is just Persona 5, with the exception of you've got the Yoshizawa social link, you've got the Dr. Maruki social link, and then you've got the totally revamped Akachi social link. Which those are all brand new, and there's some new story scenes associated with those characters, and they integrate those characters in with like the main cast in different ways. And then there's obviously all the new like mechanical content and stuff like that that's in there. Some new stuff you can do out on the city, new abilities you can get, little finicky things like that. But the bulk of the new story content all is you play the main game, the original, like you beat the last boss of the original game, all that stuff happens basically identically. And then there's a thing that happens after you beat the last boss in Persona 5 that causes, in the original game, a huge amount of time to pass. And that you have, like, no control over, and, like, the calendar just sort of swings by, and then you have, like, a moment right at the end of the game on, like, the last day it takes place, and you see all your friends, and then you go off in your van, right? And that's, like, how the original game ends. You beat the last boss, and all that happens basically the same way. And then the event that's about to trigger the thing that causes a huge passage of time is about to happen, and then it doesn't happen. And the reason it doesn't happen is actually very clever. And it's incredibly elegant, and it's something that I think at first I was worried that they were going to kind of miss part of the point of the original ending of Persona 5 by kind of skipping over stuff, but they don't. Like, everything they do is they kind of understand, I think, how to fit this in and kind of take some concepts that are like kind of hanging at the end of the game and tell a like kind of bottle story about it that serves ultimately as this kind of almost like Scouring of the Shire-esque like extended denouement of, it's a like a full extra month basically of the game. You've got like a bunch of story stuff with all of the original like existing party characters. You've got the bulk of the story is around Yoshizawa, who is your like new playable character, who again they integrate much better into like the main story than I think I would have expected of. Like, she feels like a constant presence in the game, even if her main story stuff is all focused at the end. But you kind of get into her full backstory and everything in this stretch. Akachi as a character is fully in play through ways that are very interesting. And then you have a big new boss. And the thing I like about the new boss is that it's ultimately a human character. It's another Persona user. It's not a god. And it's really interesting to see a Persona game that it has the big god, fighting god type ending that all these games and all JRPGs have. But having that ending and then bringing it back down to this like human level, and again, being very smart about how you deploy certain things to preserve the value and the message and the meaning and the intent of the original ending of the game while adding additional nuances on top of it, I think it is incredibly impressive, while also being very efficient at like being able to reuse as much as possible and have it not feel out of place. I mean, I think that is the reason why they didn't do the like, let's put all the new stuff before the original ending of the game, because then you'd have to justify this new party member and had her into animated cutscenes and into original dialogue sequences she didn't exist in, and that would be redoing a huge amount of work. That's like 10 hours of that game you'd have to redo it to some capacity. So they're very like economical about how they use the new stuff. But it's so smart about how they integrate it. I don't want to like go into any detail because you haven't played it and it would be big spoiler stuff. It is like interesting and it's very clever. And it kind of feels like, to me, a better way of doing something that's kind of like episode Aegis for Persona 3 Fest. I mean, that takes place after the main game, but it has a similar like extended denouement of like sort of like decompressing a lot of like the tensions amongst the characters, and that's what that thing is in Persona 3 Fest. But it's buried under like a lot of combat in that game, which I liked, but it's a lot to get through. And this guy kind of,
I did not like it, and I didn't get through it. So yeah,
and this is taking similar kind of like, I think, narrative ideas, but instead integrating it more fully into the original narrative experience. And that's something that I think it is. It makes it, to me, by far the most impressive of all of the like redone versions. It feels like it kind of takes the best elements of Persona 3 Fest and how that modified the original game, and the best elements of Persona 4 the Golden and how that modified the original game, with Persona 4 the Golden ultimately being a thing that like I have mixed feelings about how much it changes the original. And this finds this nice middle ground about having more new stuff integrated into the base game like the Golden had, and also the nice like tweaks and nuances and little bits here and there that Persona 3 Fest did, without ever changing the core tone or style or themes or messages of the original game. Like Persona 3 Fest maintains all that stuff, whereas Persona 4 the Golden changes a lot of the tone. It changes some of the things like the nuances of like the pacing and the way that game feels ultimately. And this is like, it's an incredible balancing act that they play. And I think pulling it all back down to this human level ending, and preserving the original ending and everything that ending says, while adding in these other elements about like this line that Morgana has in the end of the original Persona 5, it exploring this concept of like, you've cleared the world of the unconscious, right? Like, it's sort of like you've solved the supernatural element. You can make the world what it is. There is no such thing as the real world. The real world is what you make it, and it's what you create, is what Morgana tells you. And the new content explores that line and kind of everything it means, both good and bad. And I think that I just was like endlessly impressed. And I was very nervous going into it. When they made the shift, I saw where the shift was happening, I was like, oh, they could fuck this up so bad and completely whiff on like ruining the ending of the original game, and they don't. I think they actually make it better. I think like Persona 5 Royal is to me the definitive version of Persona 5. And it would be very fascinating to talk to somebody who never played the original game and only played Royal, because I'd love to know what their perspective is on how they interpret the story and like approach the new material and how much it feels like new material and how much it feels like essential material. Because it's a really cool thing that they've done with what is a all-time great game.
Do you think I should play it?
Yes, I would appreciate it if you would play Persona 5 Royal. So if we could talk about it.
I'm thinking I might. So I'm going home for the holidays in a couple weeks. Maybe I lug my PS5 with me. I'm driving, so I can do that. I can throw it in the back of the car, and maybe that'll just be my holiday project.
Are you sure you could put it? If it might. Have you tested the weight capacity of your car? Because it might lift a little bit. Make sure you put a little extra gas in there. Here's
I know, because Sean, it's kind of funny because I was thinking of like, do I bring my Series S or my PS5 with me? The Series S I can put in my backpack.
Yes.
My PS5, it's going to need a box of its own. Fuck. You know?
Here's my silver bullet to get you to play this game, Jonathan. Because you originally played this game with the English language voices, correct?
Yes, but I've been planning to do it with Japanese when I play Royal, because when I played it in English, I hadn't watched Gundam and I didn't know Shuichi Ikeda, but I know he's in this, obviously. So
that is my silver bullet. You have to fucking get all the Shido stuff with Shuichi Ikeda. Like, it is...
I know.
You haven't played Persona 5 if you haven't, A, watched Gundam, and B, played Persona 5 with the Japanese voices and, like, appreciate that casting choice and that performance. Because it is, like... Especially, like... You know, because I already loved Gundam and had watched all that shit by the time we did that podcast. But... I hadn't done 3 years of a Gundam-focused podcast where we have committed multiple dozens hours of our life exclusively to talking about his performance as Char. That, like, with all of that, you appreciate it even more. And again, it's stuff like, I mean, there's a lot of good Gundam people in here, because Miyano Mamoru plays Ryuji, and that's, like, really good, really cool casting.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's Setsuna from
cool.
00. Of course, he's also Light in Death Note.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's, like, the Japanese cast of this game is fucking...
Pikachu as Morgana. I mean, you literally don't get any bigger than that.
Yeah, it is the casting is so good, and the Japanese voice acting is incredible. And they get Amamiya Sora, who's a really good actress. She's in like Konosuba. She's Aqua in that show. She plays the new main character, and fucking Rengoku is the new Social Link character who also ties into a lot of the stuff in the dungeon near the end of the game.
Oh my god!
So it's like it is a utterly luxurious Japanese cast. Like that is the other thing is I think like playing Persona 5, like just the original content will be like a fresh experience in a lot of ways just from that perspective.
Yes, no, and I was always planning on playing it in Japanese when I revisited it. So yeah, and then playing Strikers that way as well. So. Fuck, that's a lot of game. That's a lot of... I have a couple of things I want to, like, backlog stuff I want to do before, like, February. Because I also want to play... One of the FromSofts the two FromSofts I haven't hit are Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. And I want to do one of those before Elden Ring. And I also want to play all this Persona 5 stuff. I don't know if I can do all of it. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. I've still got Nier, which I'm like... I'm almost, like, afraid to play it. Have you ever had that with a thing where it's like...
Yeah.
Nier Automata is, like... I've put on record as my favorite game of all time, and I'm like terrified of playing another Nier game. So I feel like I've been putting it off. And I did pick up, because they were both on sale, I did get the Demon Slayer game, which I'm not like gonna rush to try to put that, because I don't know if it would be a top 10 game. That's like a comfort food game. I did also buy Tales of Arise because I've seen and heard so much good stuff about that I want to try to get that in, and I think that's going to be my load. And then obviously, of course, Halo Infinite's campaign is out soon, and that will probably not be that long to get through. But
the other one I want to play, because it's on Game Pass, and I just put on my Xbox, is Scarlet Nexus. Looks really good. Mm-hmm. And that might be one I try to do, because people have loved that one, and I can just get it for free on Game Pass. But anyway, a lot of game stuff coming up. This is just a crazy month. But I don't know. Maybe, fuck it. Maybe I just start playing Persona 5 tonight. I don't know.
That's what I did. We did that, what was it, the 400th podcast, and Occasional Thomas was like, you guys should play Persona 5. I'm like, you know what? I should, and then I just hit it, and it made me very happy. Because fuck everything else. We don't have a responsibility to play every fucking video game. We're not paid to do this shit.
No,
we're not paid at all.
I think I will not start it tonight because I do need to finish Iron-Blooded Orphans, and I don't want to be like come home every night and
That is a fair point. That is one of the reasons why one of those podcasts, or like why I kind of slightly pushed for one of that to be delayed. One of the weeks it was delayed was like, I'm very busy playing Persona 5, please.
Okay, finish Iron-Blooded Orphans, finish some of my work, then maybe I start playing Persona 5 Royal. We'll figure it out. Honestly, you say, are you ever afraid of playing a game? Sean, that's Persona 5 Royal for me, because I know I will love it to an unhealthy degree. So, there you go. But yeah. All right. I think that's it for this week. This has been... How did this get to 3 hours? What the fuck?
It's been 2 weeks since we talked,
It
man.
has.
And I got a fucking Xbox, Halo... I mean, Halo happened. When was the last time we got to actually like talk about Halo on this podcast? It's been forever.
It has been forever, and you got to talk about Persona. That was fun. And next week will be Iron-Blooded Orphans Season 2, the last Weekly Suit Gundam of the year, which this has been a crazy year for Weekly Suit Gundam, Sean. Man alive. You and I need to have a conversation off the air about what we do after Iron-Blooded Orphans, because we actually haven't figured that out yet.
That's true.
It's so fun. A lot of good stuff for the end of the year in this podcast. There's a bunch of movies coming out. We got a new Spider-Man. We got a new Matrix. We're probably going to have to do an episode, Sean, that is Spider-Man No Way Home and Matrix 4 in one episode. So
that sounds like a bad idea.
For that one.
Sounds like when we did the freaking Eva podcast and we did all 4 of those movies in one podcast like idiots.
Well, they come out 5 days apart from each other, so we'll see. Anyway, Sean, next week though, Iron-Blooded Orphans. We'll see where we go from there. I'm excited.
In the meantime, I've had this fucking Amazon page with the Duke Xbox One controller open the entire time, and it's been looking more and more enticing the whole time. So we got into this podcast because I ain't buying this shit. I'm an idiot.